So hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I know I have not uploaded fanfics for quite a while now, but that changes from here on out. I won't go back on my decision to upload explanations and debates on this channel. However, I have decided that I will carry fanfictions along as well throughout this journey. I don't know where we will end up with this, but I hope you all continue giving your love and support to this channel. Anyways, this is the 5th part of the story. What if Naruto and Sasuke gained memories of their past? If you guys enjoy this what if and want more, comment down below to let me know. The comments on videos really help me out a lot. They motivate me to upload more frequently, so please do comment down below. Before I start, please do support for more awesome contents and leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And share this video with your friends and also check out the descriptions and check out the playlists. But that out of the way, let's start. Tsunade handed 3 scrolls to Sasuke. Here. Considering that Naruto has been dabbling with medicine, you might know these chakra control exercises, but still. Memorize them and practice them for the next 5 days. When the time limit is up, you come and show me the progress. Depending on said progress, we will consider how to move forward. And careful with chakra exhaustion. Sasuke took the scrolls and nodded. Understood, Hokage-sama. Tsunade's brown gaze bore into his black for a moment. Sensei, from now on for both of you. She corrected. Is the task clear? Sasuke tilted his head to the side in surprise, but hummed. Clear as crystal, Tsunade-sensei. Satisfied, the woman handed a stack of books to Naruto. I know you're going to use Kage Bunshin anyway, so no complaining. She said, even before Naruto could open his mouth to speak, read all of these at your own pace, from cover to back. I'm going to be quizzing you on the topics these things are essential if you want to be a medic. In the meanwhile, I suggest more chakra control for you as well. You can't have your chakra acting out of control as it may be dangerous for your future patients and your Jinchuriki status is no excuse. Naruto nodded, his violet eyes glinting with steel. Understood, Tsunade-sensei. Tsunade smiled. Oh, and in between the theory and chakra control, Kakashi will be supervising your physical training. You follow his instructions as you did before, regardless of your new rank. She stated calmly, although both boys understood that it was a politely wrapped order. Of course, Kakashi raised an eyebrow at Sasuke. This was supposed to be their Jinjutsu session well, it was. But he was supposed to teach Sasuke, not the other way around. What do you mean? He asked the Uchiha. Sasuke sighed. I mean that you are not an Uchiha. Despite your moniker, no one ever taught you how to properly use the Sharingan. Now, usually I would not do this as you are not kin by blood. He shrugged, but you have the Sharingan and the Uchiha are almost gone. Now, I presume you know the basic abilities of the Sharingan, naturally. Kakashi nodded. Yes, but I can only use it for a short time. My body wasn't built to sustain the eye. Sasuke hummed. Naturally. Now, Uchiha don't have the unearthly stamina of Senju or Uzumaki, but we did have stronger bodies actually, all Otatsuki descendants are on the sturdier side, so to say. Now your body wasn't built to sustain it, yes. But, I have a few tricks. He smirked. Tricks? Sasuke shrugged. I wasn't always capable of leveling mountains in the past, sensei. I had been a child too. I learned a trick or two. How to use my chakra to fight the chakra depletion that came with the Sharingan. As I grew older, it was such a minor drain that I just simply didn't bother deactivating it anymore. So, I'll show you a few tricks and you teach my Rakiri. Kakashi's eye narrowed. Sasuke scrolled his eyes. I'm being completely fair and ethical here. I'm asking you to teach it, not asking for permission to use it. I didn't copy. The silver-haired man nodded with a small sigh. Fair enough, but we start with Chidori, as that's the first step. Sasuke grinned. So, about the chakra. You have Raiden like Ido, so. Kakashi pouted under his mask. Uchiha progenitor and Sage's son or not, this is embarrassing. So embarrassing. I'm being lectured by my own student. Yamato, save me. Jiraiya hummed as he looked at the precise writing of the blonde. Perfect. He nodded, satisfied. Naruto sighed a bit, letting the brush drop back into the small pot of ink. Who knew Jiraiya was so demanding and such a perfectionist when he was actually serious about training? Of course, Naruto had his own standard, but Jiraiya was even worse. Seriously, the Gama-Sanin could go and shake hands with his brother if it came to perfectionism. Perhaps Jiraiya had some great-great-great-grand someone in his family who had been an Uchiha. Thank the Shinju. The blonde muttered, his hand cramped. He shifted and looked at the man. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow at his words, but he didn't say anything. Now, I know that you have water and earth for affinity. Actually, Naruto cut in calmly, it's water, wind and earth. And Sasuke has lighting, fire and earth. For me water and earth are equal, wind is a bit weaker. Sasuke's fire and lightning are equal, coupled with a bit weaker earth. But we are both working with all 5 elements. Or at least, trying to. The spy master blinked and then nodded. Well, okay. I can teach you about Suiton, although if the account I heard was correct, you're capable of using Suiton, like Tobirama-sama. Naruto shook his head. Not yet. I would need the perfect control of a medic for that due to my larger reserves, so further honing the ability of using moisture as a source has to wait a bit, I think. Jiraiya sighed. Fine. But I can help you with some water jutsu. And if you really want to tamper with all 5 elements, we can start on the basic exercises for lightning and fire, too. Naruto stood along with the man and nodded. Now that he was calmer and more composed, it was actually nice being around him. And it seemed that his words about family had hit right home with the Sannin, which was also a bonus. Sounds nice. He put his hand in a cross sign, creating 10 shadow clones. He sent 5 to do chakra control, while he waved the 5 over to Jiraiya. You can explain to the clones. Please. I'd go through the usual warm-up before a spar, because I have a feeling you want to see what I can do. The man blinked owlishly. Well yeah. Alright. It would work too, I suppose. He muttered, shocked. What was up with those two? Both Naruto and Sasuke trained so seriously. He'd never seen anyone so driven and focused in times of peace. Those who had grown up surrounded by war, it was one thing. But these two lived in a time of peace and they were preparing for war. Alright, he knew better than most among the higher-ups how dangerous Akatsuki could prove in the future, but that didn't mean an outright war coming. It did. Team 13, you have a B-rank mission. Tsunade said, looking at the 2 young men. Kakashi and Yamato stood calmly behind the Tokijima. And it is? The copy nin asked calmly. Tsunade handed them a folder, which Sasuke took. Eliminate the slave traders spotted near the land of sound. Free their victims and escort them home. The Hokage noticed how sharply her part-time students' gazes flashed. The eyes of men who didn't tolerate injustice. Consider it done. And she did just that, considered the mission done the moment they left the office. Now, back to paperwork. Kami-sama knows it piles up even more when I leave to help those 2 train. She glared at her distant cousin's portrait. How the hell had you had any time for Kushina, Minato? What was your secret to finishing all that paperwork so fast? Somehow I doubt it has anything to do with the Hirishin. Or Tobirama Oji-san would have never spent a moment in this damnable office. Naruto groaned, falling into his bed like a log. Tsunade Oba-sen was a slave driver. And her punches hurt like hell. Hashirama's granddaughter, without a doubt. Was this how Sasuke felt when he used Chakra Ancient's strength in their spars? If so, he promised to use them less or at least pull some of the punches. If not for Kurama's healing abilities, he wouldn't have even stood up from the spot on the training ground where he'd fallen. You're a lifesaver, N plus Ama. He said through their link. The fox cackled evilly. And your day's not done yet. You promised to meet the 2 Haika today. Shinju, damn it, he muttered. After a moment, he sat up with a sigh. N plus Ama. Are you alive? He drawled. Maybe. His brother answered, his voice quiet. Who knew Kakashi could be that fast? He surely picked up something from your father. Or he uses lightning to enhance his speed. And he's getting way too creative with ninjutsu. I should have never shown him that chakra trick, he muttered. Naruto hummed. Well, come on. We promised training to Hinata and Neji, and I keep my promises. Why us? Sasuke asked dramatically as he wretched himself from the comforts of the couch. Naruto chuckled at that, and after activating the security seals, they headed towards training ground 2, the spot they'd agreed to meet at. When they arrived, Neji and Hinata were already there, conversing quietly. The sight caused both of them to smile a bit. Ever since that beatdown Neji had gotten a week ago, he was actually making an effort to bond with Hinata. Hinata, being the kind soul she was, had forgiven him fast and was just glad to have him back to his old kinder self. Omen. Naruto called sheepishly as they approached. We didn't mean to be late. It's just. Tsunade-sensei and Kakashi-sensei can be slave drivers when they want to be. It's a challenge sometimes, keeping up with them. Hokage-sama is training you? Hinata asked, her eyes wide. Naruto hummed. She's helping me learn medical ninjutsu, and she thought it was high time for me to learn the proper senjutsu jutsu, so yes. Oh, I see. So, Sasuke spoke, we thought about helping you with elemental manipulatin. Clues to your affinities. Fire. Neji stated. Sasuke smirked. You're coming with me, then. I'm sure we can work out a few tricks that you can incorporate into your gentle fist as well. If you have chakra manipulation done, the sky is the limit. The 2 left and Naruto was left on his own with Hinata. Do you know your affinity, Hinata? He asked. She shook her head. No, and Naruto-kun. I don't know it why yet, she said softly, poking her fingers together. Naruto took a deep breath. Okay, that's how far my patience runs. No cousin of mine will be a meek civilian. Hinata. He called as he sat down. She looked up at him. Hi, do you want to be a kunoichi? A kunoichi who can stand her ground and in the future, a clan head whom her kin loves and respects? He asked seriously. Her eyes widened a bit at the questions, but she nodded without much hesitation. Yes. I've long dreamt of uniting my clan. Naruto raised an eyebrow. unite. She shook her head. They're all my family and I hate we're so divided. We should be equals because you can't create a line who you love more. Naruto smiled brightly. Mitra's words alright. Exactly. He told her with a nod. An admirable dream. Her eyes went wide at that. That's why you have to be strong. Not only as a kunoichi, but as a person. Don't second guess yourself, because if you second guess yourself, so will others, and that may undermine your credibility, both as a shinobi and as a leader. You understand? She nodded. Hi. The blonde smiled and took a piece of paper from his pocket. Push your chakra into this and we'll see what's your affinity. She took it from him and pushed her chakra into it, causing the paper to crumble. Earth. Typically Haika. He nodded. So the thing you have to know about Earth as an element, it's firm and stable. A defensive element, and sometimes, who link emotions to the 5 base elements, say that it's for resolve. Because you decide something and no matter what you stand by it and go through with it. She nodded. I see. Naruto smiled. So. To get a better grasp, you'll have to understand your own emotions first. Think of your dream and why you want it to come true. Then, grab for it. Decide if you want it or not. If yes, then hold on to it and no matter what, don't let go. Fire is an offensive element which reflects strong emotions. In fact, your emotions change how your chakra reacts, so it also affects your jutsu. Sasuke said, so my advice is, never ever think of negativity when working with fire or your own jutsu may backfire. Neji nodded. I see. Best is to keep a clear mind, but there are times when you can't do that. So focus instead on the positive side of your objective. Protecting the people who matter or making it home because there's someone who's waiting and they would be devastated if you died. Sasuke hummed and did a few rapid signs. Kaiten. Morohari. Fire release. Burning needs. Flames formed in his hands that sneaked up onto his fingers, creating tiny needles on each end. Neji's eyes widened. This is similar to how we used Ken. Sasuke nodded. Yeah. I created this one based on Mitra's fighting style. Now, since you have even better control of your chakra than I do, you may limit the flames but still make your chakra searing hot, which would be extra damage to your enemy as the fire chakra would literally burn his coils. But, this is crippling. So use it in life on the line situations. Understood. The Haika nodded, his face serious. Sasuke hummed. The seals for the jutsu are tiger, bird, dog, tiger. You won't have a chance to use the seals every time before you may be engaged, so I want you to master this. Make the jutsu a second nature and if that works, you can modify it to your needs and liking. Neji blinked at him. Modify it. But you just said you created it. Sasuke nodded. Yes, and I'm giving you permission to use it. Although, don't be surprised if next time we spar, I'm using this against you or Hinata. I'll keep that in mind, Sasuke-indra. He asked with a raised eyebrow. The Uchiha waved him off. Sasuke. Wouldn't want to raise suspicion, right? Besides, there's a fucker from long ago who knows that name. He would figure out who we are and that's dangerous. He said quietly. No human lives that long. Neji pointed out with disbelief. Even you just remember. It's not the same. Sasuke sighed. The one I'm talking about is not exactly human, so yes, lives that long. Not human? Then what else could it possibly be? Sasuke snorted in amusement. You sound way too shocked. Our grandmother was not of this world, she was what you would call an alien, I suppose. A foreigner to the world of humans. While our grandfather was human, our father and uncle retained none of the typical human traits. Myself, Asura and our cousins were the first Otatsuki to look entirely human. Neji groaned. Holy mother of Chakra. Hey. That's my grandmother you're badmouthing, Haika. He warned with a sharp look. And while her love for humanity disappeared over the years, it's thanks to her and our father that this world knows what Chakra is. So no badmouthing her. My apologies. Sasuke nodded, looking at Neji's hands. So. Let me see that jutsu. And if you get that done, I'll show you a trick to keep your chakra in balance. Naruto smiled as Hinata succeeded with the exercise. Well done, Hinata. Now, come on, let's spar. Hinata smiled and stood up. She took her stance and Naruto did the same. And remember. Now, I'm not a fellow Konoha shinobi. I'm not someone you know. I'm an enemy. I'm here to harm your sister and Neji. Fight as if their lives depended on it. Don't pull your strikes. She nodded, her eyes stealing over. Hi. She still seemed a bit unsure, but his words seemed to be having an effect, so that was good. Then, without a warning, he punched the ground, breaking it up and forcing her to leap away. Using the cover of the dust, he shunshined next to her, but it seemed the moment his punch had connected, she'd activated her byakugan so she was waiting prepared. He attacked, but she evaded swiftly, using her smaller body to duck under his attack before trying to deliver her own strikes. Naruto blinked at Jiraiya, scandalized even at the very idea. You want me to what? The Sannin sighed. Come on Naruto. You've kept putting this off ever since we started training. You have to learn it sometime. Naruto shook his head. If he used Kurama's chakra, it would just give Madara and his subordinates a chance to steal his oldest brother's power easier. His new seal was tighter than the one his father had used, yet it still allowed Kurama to sense the outside world. Kurama was safe in there and that was all that mattered. He shook his head. "I will not use the fox's chakra," he stated calmly. Jiraiya groaned. "Naruto, please. You have to understand that we have no ways of combating Jinchuriki. Only someone with a Bijka of their own can do that. Kumo and I would train their Jinchuriki as the village's most dangerous last resort weapons." Kiri had done something similar before the Blood9 Wars created the bloody mess which the village is at the moment. Naruto frowned. "My Mokuton is powerful enough to restain them. No need to fight them. I will not fight my own siblings, Sanin. No matter what you say, I'm still an Otatsuki at heart and family comes first. Family and peace. Your suggestion indicates that you want me as a trump card, too. Well, the village wants me as such, that is," he thought. Jiraiya frowned. "Look kid, I get it. You're a bloody pacifist even more than the Shaddai and Minato were, combined, which is a feat. I understand that too, that you freaking see that Fox in you as a living. He is a living creature with feelings of his own." Naruto cut in sharply. Jiraiya grunted. "Okay, yes. But that feeling creature will be discorporated if you die. Or if you're captured by Akatsuki, something worse may happen. Use the power you have because you know what for do you need it. To protect what you believe right. Akatsuki will use that power to destroy." "So, which one?" Naruto scowled. The pervert is correct for once, Asura-kun," Kurama said. "You've used my chakra before. I know that I can trust you as my brother. I would rather have you borrowing some of my chakra or Indra if needed than anyone else. I understand now that what you two are doing is as much for the safety of the world Otama loved so much as it is for our safety. I don't need protecting, little one. I'm strong enough to do it for myself, but the Uchihas are powerful enough to control you. You can't resist the Sharingan forever and you know it," Naruto pointed out matter-of-factly. "Alone? No. Together. If we work together, yes. This seal you made protects me and if continued survival means you using my chakra it's alright. Take what you need. We're siblings. We help each other. And I want to help protect this world too. The humans hadn't been nice to me after you were gone, but Otama loved this world. And we ought to honor his wishes." "Yes, we ought to," he agreed softly. He huffed and nodded to the Sannin, his hand rising into a snake seal. Then he crouched down and slammed his hand on the ground. "Mokuton. Kimono no Jinja. Wood release. Shrine of the Beast." A circular platform with 6 wooden poles rose from the ground, the poles having carvings of what seemed to be unfinished seals all around. Jiraiya blinked. "What's this for?" Naruto shrugged and walked over, sitting in the middle of his new wooden creation. "Just to be safe. I wouldn't want to lose my head." He sighed and closed his eyes. After a moment, he cracked his right eye open to peer at the seal master. "Had a containment seal ready for the worst of cases. Just to be safe. I'm not sure how much my body can take before shutting down." The man peered at him with narrowed eyes, suspicion rearing its head amongst his emotions. Naruto sighed and closed his eyes instead of engaging the man in a pointless conversation. He would not explain anything to Jiraiya. He wasn't sure the man could take the information in a serious manner. Besides, the less people knew, the better. Maybe there were too many who knew the truth of him and Sasuke already. He couldn't risk making a possible target out of someone who could go on with life without knowing the truths of Ninja. He closed his eyes and dived headfirst into his subconscious. The calm, bright clearing that was a nice change compared to Konoha's loud, busy streets. Kurama was sitting up, already waiting for him. Naruto walked up to the fox and smiled, dipping his head. Asura-kun. Kurama greeted, his tone more pleasant now that he was here, visiting. "How much do you think I can handle now?" Naruto mused out loud. 6. Kurama nodded. "Possible. Although, your body is still developing, so I wouldn't push it. However, if there is a true need for it, I'm sure we could work in tandem, like before. Of course, you won't be able to form Varuna just yet, not without the others giving you some of their chakra, but it's fine." He waved him off. "I just would like to know how much I can handle at the moment." Kurama nodded. "Very well, Otanto," he said, offering a fisted paw. Naruto grinned brightly and bumped his own fist to the soft fur-like chakra. The chakra that suddenly filled his system was wild and sharp like wind and as searing as the hottest of fires. It basked his body in an orange-red light, the cloak forming slowly, taking shape heartbeat by heartbeat. When he opened his eyes, returning to the real world, Kurama's chakra blazing around him and sharpening his senses 10 times to their usual level, he saw Jiraiya. The man was as unmoving as a rock, every muscle in his body ready to spring from his spot. His dark eyes narrowed, searching for the smallest sign of lost control. As their eyes met, he saw the frown, worried and wary all at once. So, his eyes were red. "Three Tails is okay," Kurama murmured. try pulling out more, but careful or it might burn you. Nodding mentally, Naruto carefully tugged at the link they shared and let more of the foreign chakra flood his bloody. Jiraiya watched, his whole body tense, as Naruto took a meditative pose, probably already sinking into his seal. For several minutes nothing happened and he thought the kid might fail. Kushina herself admitted that using the fox's chakra wasn't easy, despite the fact that she had her chains, which helped restrain it and thus give her a better chance of remaining aware of her surroundings while undergoing the usual Jinchuriki transformation. However, much to his shock, just when he was about to call out to Naruto to stop, chakra rose no. It burst out of his body like a fountain. The next minute, his body was covered by a boiling, seemingly living shroud of orange-red chakra, 3 tails waving behind him. What the hell? 3 at once? On the first try. Is it because of his Mokuton? Jiraiya thought in shock. The 6 whiskers were darker, more easy to see, his teeth sharpening into fangs which peered out from his mouth. Then Naruto opened his eyes to reveal bright red slits and he tensed for a second, fearing the worst. But there was nothing. There was no beastly bloodlust in the gaze. Those were the fox's eyes, yes, but it was Naruto who was looking at him. Amazing. He can really control it. There was fluctuation in the chakra and Jiraiya was snapped from his musings. His eyes went wide as he saw more tails forming. 1, 2, 3 more until a total 6 were visible behind the blonde. Half his body was covered in solid blackish red chakra, resembling a grotesque shadow of the Kikbi, while the other half of his body was still visible under the orange chakra. He noticed another stub growing, a 7th chakra tail forming, and then Naruto groaned and faster than Jiraiya could react. The carvings on the wood surrounding Naruto glowed and vines grew from the platform to warp around his legs and arms. The chakra sizzled like boiling water and then it gradually disappeared. Naruto groaned again, falling on his back. Shit. That's just 6 tails. My body can't take the 7th. He sounded disappointed. Jiraiya couldn't understand why. By the sage's beard. That was amazing, kid. I don't know what's your problem. You performed much better than I thought, considering other Jinchuriki need months to reach this level. Naruto glared at him, his eyes still slit, although violet. Probably the leftover chakra. Could you please refrain from cursing? Jiraiya rolled his eyes. Kami knows the blonde was growing to be too much like Tsunade. Sasuke wrinkled his nose as it failed again. Having been the prodigy of ninja, he was rather unused to failure. True, ever since they remembered it was different. He failed more often as he had to relearn everything he'd once known and used. Still, failing such a simple chakra control exercise was not something he was too happy about. Compared to the amount of control he had had over his chakra before, he was still lacking. Not bad. Tsunade spoke, a surprised and pleased expression on her face. You may never be a medic as your chakra is too volatile for that. But despite that, your control has places to grow and I admit you're progressing faster than I thought you would. Sasuke nodded, not showing his irritation at the failure. Thank you, sensei. He said calmly. Have you thought about using poisons? She asked. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. I'm sorry, you don't wish to pursue a medical career, which I understand. But we're shinobi. Supposed assassins. Poison is a good way, and your Sharingan gives you quick reaction time and higher accuracy than most bar the Haikyuu. Using and knowing your poisons may be beneficial, and knowing how to counter them. Naruto may be the medic, but he may not always be there with you or your comrade. Sasuke felt thoughtful. Poison was a subtle, underhanded weapon. The weapon of a liar. But the world was no longer as straight and simple as it had been at the dawn of Chakra. Besides, if Tsunade taught him about poisons, he would know the antidotes too, which could come in handy if Naruto wasn't around. Besides, he knew his plants well enough. You couldn't not know plants when gardening was your brother's hobby, and let's not mention said brother's ability to grow plants. Poison sounds interesting enough. He commented with an upward quirk of his lips. Tsunade's eyes glinted. Wonderful. So finish another round of the chakra control exercise and while you rest, Shizune will help you with poisons. Unfortunately, I have to leave to do paperwork, but tomorrow I'm quizzing you on the poisons and the symptoms as well as their antidotes. How I'm supposed to remember all that for tomorrow? He bit out, half annoyed, half disbelieving. Odds above, as much as he respected the woman as a shinobi, she was annoying. More annoying than his brother. Tsunade quirked an eyebrow, which was a bit too close to Asura's for his liking. You have eidetic memory, don't you? Sasuke growled. I so didn't sign up for this. He resisted the urge to send several Ribari after the Senju when he noticed the smugness flash in her eyes as she darted back into the office. He resisted it but just barely. Naruto shook his head at Yamato. No. You get to be in tune with nature. I know you aren't a Senju and that Mokuton was never supposed to be yours. But use it if you have it. He sighed and sat opposite from Yamato. The man was theoretically teaching him Mokuton Jutsu. That was what Tsunade and Jiraiya believed. But in fact, he was teaching the former Anbu how to handle his abilities with more deadliness and precision. Nature has an energy of its own. Mokuton connects us to that energy more than any sort of senjutsu can. And there's a part in our chakra that enables creation. It's these two things that make up the Kekkei Genkai itself, so you need to calm down and try feeling nature around you. You understand what I'm getting at? Yamato seemed thoughtful for a moment before nodding. I think so. He nodded hesitantly. Naruto smiled and extended a hand. Give me your hand. You may have an easier time trying to pull my chakra into the mix as it is more potent. It may help you with the feeling as well. Once you have that, your chakra will remember it. Chakra remembers and it will leave a vague feeling, the shadow of a memory. Using that shadow, you may have easier time using the technique until you practice it enough to actually know it. I see. It sounds interesting. Yamato took his hand and Naruto smiled, allowing his chakra to slowly tickle through their link. Chakra is connection. It's understanding yourself, others and the world around you. And when you understand, you can connect. Those connections make it possible to reach wondrous things. As a part of our power comes from our souls and minds. The blonde murmured. He sat there and allowed Yamato to take his time. They'd been going through this for the past 2 days and now he was sure the former Anbu finally caught the concept. The concept of ninja as much as the concept of the jutsu they were working on. He felt Yamato mold his chakra and he did a few one-handed signs before placing his hand on the ground and channeling his chakra into it. Mokuton. Shakibutsu. Wood release. Carnivorous plant. The ground between them cracked and a Venus flytrap grew from the soil. A lively green with accents of reddish pink and it was as big as an average 8-year-old child. It was dangerously beautiful as it opened its maw, ready to strike. Naruto grinned. See? Told you it will work. Now we'll just have to refine it so you can use it alone and possibly on a bigger target. Yamato smiled and squeezed his hand. Neji cursed colorfully in the privacy of his mind as Naruto's blow sent him flying. The blonde's hits broke bone and he was sure he'd need medical attention once the session was over. Good thing Naruto could heal or both him and Hinata would have spent half their days under the hands of Tsunade-sama and that would have raised questions. Even more questions than their random disappearances these days. He shifted, trying to land in a way that would cause less problems. However, he wasn't lucky and as he rolled, he felt the ground scrape even the metal of his headband. He felt the skin break and blood bubble up. Damn it. It hurts like hell. He groaned mentally. Neji and plus. Hinata squeaked from the sidelines. Ever since they came here to train with Naruto and Sasuke he saw the change in her. She was improving in her Jiken and from time to time Sasuke and Naruto showed them a new kata or combo ones that neither of them knew yet he was sure were part of the Jiken. Perhaps time had cut the number of kata that had been recorded and what the two were showing them were among the original ones used by Homura and Otatsuki. She was improving as a fighter and with her skill, so grew her confidence. Notch by notch, but it was growing. She was stuttering less and less and she was now speaking louder. Well, around them, that is for now, back at the compound, she was still feeling insecure so she often reverted back to her shy self but she was speaking up more and more and Neji knew that the clan, especially her father, were picking up the subtle changes. Neji groaned as he felt the pain shoot through his body like a sharp blade as he shifted. Soon, he felt rather than saw as the three appeared around him. He saw Hinata's wide, worried eyes as well as Sasuke's much subtler concerned frown. It was odd. Ever since he knew who the two were, it was easier to understand them and it helped connecting. The more time they spent together, the more he felt that the two were their friends. Hinata was becoming more and more like a sister. Naruto cursed under his breath something about the moon and he felt the warm chakra enter his body. Immediately, the sharp pain started to dull and it was easier to breathe. Naruto reached for his headband. We must check that head wound. Despite his pain, Neji's hand shot to catch the blonde's wrist. He didn't want Naruto to see it. Don't. Naruto scowled at him and twisted his wrist out of his loose hold. Don't be ridiculous, Neji. I can heal you and you know it. He didn't have the energy to tell the blonde that it wasn't his healing abilities, but he doubted. Naruto removed his hideite and used the sleeve of his shirt to wipe away the blood. Naruto went stiff and Neji felt shame creeping up on his spine. What is that on your forehead? The blonde asked, his voice calm and cool, but Neji sensed it. Such a tone from the usually jovial Senju meant danger. It's the caged bird's seal. He whispered softly. Explain. Sasuke barked, his voice cracking like thunder and as Neji slowly sat up, leaning on Naruto, he knew they had no chance but to tell the truth. After Neji and Hinata were done explaining the purpose and the brief history of the seal, Sasuke felt like marching over to the supposedly all-seeing bastards and torching a few, or a lot, of them. And this was him. He usually didn't get worked up, that was what his brother was here for. Naruto got emotional enough for the both of them. He needed all his famous Otatsuki uchiha stoicism not to turn on his heels and march into Hikage Browns with blazing mangyeko. Naruto was having a very hard time not letting all his chakra out and Sasuke could hear Kurama's curses too. Their big brother was inventing very colorful words about certain humans and how said humans had the balls to twist their father's ninja. After a solid 5 minutes of cursing, he definitely cursed like a sailor or like someone who'd once lived near the red light district. Naruto took a deep breath and his eyes fluttered closed. Sasuke looked at the two Hyuga, who were both red in the face after hearing his brother's choice of words directed at certain members of their clan. Naruto helped Neji up and he nodded to Hinata as well. "You two are coming," was all he said, his tone clipped. Sasuke wasn't even surprised when Naruto gave him instructions on how to check Neji's wound and how to apply a bit of chakra to help along the healing before disappearing into the library. Namely, into the biggest untouched in generations library of the village. As they were sitting in the living room of the empty main house of the Senju district, the place where 3 out of 5 Hokage had dwelt in their own times. "Why are we here?" Hinata asked softly as she watched him treat Neji. "I thought this place wasn't used anymore." "It's not," Sasuke said. "Tsunade lives in the Hokage residence and we live in the apartment that Naruto's father had owned while alive. But many of the Senju's documents are here for safekeeping. Even documents and jutsu from the Uzumaki clan, either brought here by Midō or by my godmother when she fled Yuzu's fall." Neji raised an eyebrow at him. "Naruto's mother was your godmother?" Sasuke hummed, amused at the shocked expression on the older boy's face. "Aye, she was." When he was done with the wounds cleaning and healing, Neji put his headband back. For several minutes, there was a heavy awkward silence between them and Sasuke wished his brother would hurry up because, "I got it," came the echoing call from somewhere on the other side of the sizable house. Sasuke huffed, shaking his head as he heard Naruto running back to them. He had a victorious grin on his face, although his violet eyes were calling for blood. "I got it," he said triumphantly, waving an elaborate swirl-patterned scroll container. Sasuke arched an eyebrow. "What is that?" Naruto tossed it at him and he caught it in the air as Naruto glided over to Neji, saying he wanted to have a look at his wounds. Sasuke wasn't offended at all, he was crap when it came to healing. While his brother fussed around the Hyuga, Sasuke gently peeled the document out of its holder and rolled it out. The blood contract between the Uzumaki clan of Uzushiogakure and the Hyuga clan of Konohagakure. Sasuke blinked at the title and carefully rolled out the obviously ancient document. As he read it, his eyes went wide. The cage bird seal was in Uzumaki creation. Specifically requested by the Hyuga, and here in this scroll everything about the seal was written down to the last dot. The application and its removal as well as the conditions of its use. And by the looks of it, enslavement wasn't on the list of approved usage. Sasuke wanted to know when had Naruto found this and where, but it didn't matter much. Not now. What mattered was that with this, they could place the Hyuga in a chokehold unless they wanted to face serious repercussions. Sasuke's eyes snapped up from the scroll as he heard a painful hiss. Naruto checked Neji's wound and then sighed, satisfied. "Nothing serious. Just don't train tomorrow. Take it easy, alright? Now, I need you to stay still. As motionless as you can be. I will apply some chakra to your seal, and no, I won't activate it, I give you my word. It will just be to show the whole thing to show its hidden shiki," he explained calmly. Neji looked unsure for a moment and Naruto felt bad. No doubt, because each time chakra was put into the seal, he had felt immense pain. "I swear on the kami, it won't hurt. It will sting, but it will be a fleeting thing. I think we can trust him, Neji, and plus. Let him." Hinata sighed quietly. Neji gave her a long look before the pale eyes turned to him, boring into his own violet. "Do it." Naruto gave him an encouraging smile. "Close your eyes, please." As Neji did so, Naruto placed a hand on Neji's forehead and pushed some chakra into the seal. The black lines lit up and Neji hissed in pain. Naruto immediately felt bad, but it was soon gone as it was replaced by a feeling of victory as the complete array appeared, the intricate symbols spreading across his face. Naruto didn't take his eyes off the many symbols as he reached toward Sasuke. "Then plus the scroll, if you would." Sasuke placed it into his hand and Naruto looked down at the very bottom of the paper where the prototype of the seal was drawn. His eyes narrowed and then he looked back at Neji's face. It was different. "But, then plus come, have a look. Your Sharingan is perfect for this sort of thing. Is there a difference between the two seals?" "I think so, but perhaps it's just the smuggled ink." Sasuke slipped from his seat and studied the scroll for a bit before looking at the seal on Neji's face. "It is different. And it's not just a symbol or two, like an adjustment over time. There's an entire layer on it that is not on the scroll. You're the Kenjutsu expert, but that top layer seems to be a newer addition, rather clumsy compared to the rest." Naruto snarled. "I'm so gutting someone today." He took a deep breath as he felt Kurama's own chakra rising at his volatile emotions. He applied a burst of chakra and the symbols disappeared from Neji's face. "Arigato, Neji. You can readjust your headband now." Naruto rolled up a scroll he was holding and slowly stood up. As he looked at his brother he saw the Sharingan flash sinisterly. "How about we visit our most beloved cousins, Otanto?" Ike Hiashi was a calm man who knew the value of hiding one's emotions. However, he couldn't help but look surprised when one of the guards from the gate appeared in his study and told him that Uchiha Sasuke and Senju Uzumaki Naruto were here and that they wanted to speak with him without delay. Itachi briefly wondered what his former classmate sons wanted from him. True, with their promotion Takubetsu Jimnin on the spot, wasn't that a surprise? They were both considered adults and thus, heads of their respective clans. Well, at least Naruto was head of the Uzumaki, as technically, with Tsunade alive, he was only the heir of the Senju. But the two were clan heads anyway, the youngest in Konoha's history so far. I will see them. He said. The guard was gone in a shunshin and Hiashi took his time to arrange his paperwork, knowing that probably he wouldn't be doing anything else today. After several minutes, the two Takubetsu Jimnin walked in, flanked by his elder daughter and nephew. What a surprise from what he'd gathered. The two boys were rather detached from those their age and only associated with each other and their former senseis. Neji seemed winded as did Hinata. Had they been training? But why outside the compound then? I don't know. The boys' voices were oddly frosty. Frosty even for a son of Uchiha Fugaku, and that was a true feat. Uzumaki don't know, Uchiha don't know. What brings you here? Naruto held up a scroll. Clan business of the most serious nature. His voice was almost terrifyingly like Minato's had been when he had been angry. What could have possibly pissed off these two? He didn't remember doing anything, and while the elders had been loud about the boys' promotion and the possibility of their political power expanding, he'd brushed it aside. The two were shinobi promising shinobi of the future, not budding politicans. And while he'd heard from Hinata that Naruto's dream was to be Hokage, he doubted that dream would come true. Despite the reveal of his heritage and his Mokuton, some still saw the blonde as the Kikbi itself rather than just the container. Hiashi was sure those people would do everything in their power to undermine the blonde's future political advances. He waved the two to sit and looked at his daughter and nephew. You may leave. Neji stays. The Uchiha stated, his tone commanding and regal. Now that he thought about it, both of them were way too compassed and regal for their age. Hiashi's eyes narrowed a bit, but the Uchiha matched his gaze without a twitch, and Hiashi had to suppress a dreadful shiver as he was met with the boy's Sharingan. There was power behind those eyes, power that he had never felt from other Uchiha in all his life. He nodded to his nephew and he watched Hinata slip out after giving a smile to Neji. These past weeks it seemed Neji had been less distant with her and they spent much more time together. What may have brought this change? The door closed and Neji remained lingering by the door. Why is it you asked for this meeting? He asked. Tell me, Haika don't know, do you know what are the consequences of breaking a blood contract? Naruto asked as he moved his hand, revealing a fancy old scroll container. What was in that? Hiashi moved his gaze from the red container and looked the blonde in the eyes. Kami, his violet eyes were just as deadly and fiery as Kushina's had been. He surely had that deadly Uzumaki temper buried in him somewhere. That usually depends on the contents of the contract, but means severe loss of political power, as well as a damaged image and prejudice for the one who broke contract. He said calmly. Well, at least, he appeared calmly. On the inside, he was getting more and more nervous. What was this all about and why were they so interested in a blood contract? If you know the consequences, then why break one? The Uchiha asked. Hiashi's pale eyes narrowed. Careful what you say under my roof, Uchiha. I broke no contract, I didn't even make one. You didn't? Naruto nodded, but one of your predecessors did and you broke that contract. Shinju only knows when. Time to pay the price for that. Abusing other clans' tech inks that were created on request and improved in the sign of good faith is a very, very bad idea. He said coldly, sliding over the scroll case, feeling intent leaking from him. Now Hiashi was on edge. They march in here and accuse him of breaking a contract he hadn't made and now they were threatening him. This was pushing it, descendants of the founders or not. Still, he took the scroll that was being offered and took it from the case. He hesitated only for a moment as he saw the boy's eyes flash. Then, he slowly unrolled it and started reading. His blood froze as he realized what it was. The blood contract between his clan and the Uzumaki. About the caged bird's seal. Hiashi couldn't help but curse in the privacy of his mind the kid had redone Minato's seal with only supervision from Jiraiya. Which meant the boy was at least Uzumaki level proficient in Genjutsu. His eyes flickered to Neji, who was still waiting patiently, his eyes occasionally flickering to the Uchiha in shock. Hiashi swallowed hard as he read the scroll. Damn those megalomaniac elders. If Naruto takes this to the Hokage, she will support him, as family. And politically too, as I know many despise the use of the seal within the village. They'll surely have the Shinobi Council support and that would be devastating for the clan. Even if the elders insist on leaving Konoha, no, that's not an opinion. Despite everything, Konoha is the safest place for us all. The other great villages had been trying to get both the byakugan and the Sharingan since the founding. What are your terms, Uzumaki Dono? He asked, dreading the answer. He knew that the next words would be the deciding factor. Remove the seal. He stated, tone clipped and leaving no room for argument. The Ashi's eyes narrowed. The safety and the secrets of the byakugan are at stake, and shouldn't all of you have a seal then? The Uchiha asked, eyes narrowed. Don't think we don't know or remember that one time when Kumo tried kidnapping Hinata. She is without a seal, and had Kumo succeeded, your seal is useless. The Ashi winced inwardly at how true Sasuke's words were. He remembered fearing for his daughter as a father and fearing for his clan's secrets in future as a clan head. Naruto growled, his eyes narrowing into fox-like slits, and Ashi was afraid he might lose it, but instead he was blasted with powerful killing intent. Thick and oppressive he wouldn't have thought he'd feel from a boy like the blonde, no matter how talented. And he knew it wasn't his tenant's Kai, as he remembered how it had felt. That seal is unethical. I understand that you wish to protect your Kekkei Genkai and clan by using it, but what family considers their cousins or uncles their servants? He growled. Besides, if you or Hinata or Hanabi were taken, any fucker could get the byakugan, seal or no. Would you want one of your daughters branded like a piece of kettle? The Uchiha asked. Then choose, then. Which of them? Hinata, because she is a kind heart and your elders don't approve of her caring nature and revolutionary ways. Or should it be Hanabi, once Hinata is the head, only because she is younger? The Ashi almost looked away. His Ashi had been branded only because he was hours younger, and after his twin's death, Neji had changed. The elders had approved of the change in the boy, but Ashi wasn't happy. Neji had been as kind as his father, a boy who was joy to be around. And then, after the mess with Kumo, everything had changed. Only because his Ashi had chosen to sacrifice himself. So he could be safe. He remembered promising his brother to take care of Neji, but he hadn't really. The boy had changed and he'd been sinking deeper and deeper into a sort of darkness Ashi believed only the Uchiha had in them. Who hadn't heard the rumors of the Uchiha's curse? And it was a terrifying thing to watch. Only for his nephew to change after the Chunin exams, after he'd faced Senju Naruto. After he'd had an encounter with Uchiha Sasuke. If what he'd heard from Guy was true, these two had changed Neji. They brought him back to what he had been, as a child. And now, his nephew was making an effort to be kinder and more considerate to the other branch members. He was spending more time with Hinata, and from what he understood, they were training together. And she was improving, he wasn't blind. Step by step, Hinata was improving and gaining confidence. Turning into a kunoichi whom the elders would approve of. Because Neji was helping her. Because these boys had helped Neji and now they were helping Hinata. And he wasn't a fool. He'd heard Hinata say that if she were made head, she'd abolish the seal. So neither Neji nor Hanabi would ever have to fear. Thinking of his daughters was also painful. Ever since Hinata started improving and gaining confidence, Hanabi was growing more and more distant. More and more disparate with every spar. Was it worth a lifetime of tradition he himself despised? For it had put a wedge between him and Ashi. Was that tradition worth a blood feud? Worth ridicule? Worth tearing apart his own family even more? He was no fool. Both of his daughters feared being sealed for one reason or another. That fear was driving them apart, that seal was driving them apart as it had driven him and his Ashi apart. His eyes flickered to Neji, and that look in his eyes almost broke him. Neji was looking at these boys with hope. As if they were more than what one could understand. Well, Hikadono? Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow. Will you let me remove those seals? Or is your tradition worth a blood feud? No village will take in a clan that has an ongoing blood feud, even if you leave. Your clan will fall apart physically as fallen apart they are mentally. No family survives being divided. And one day, the Uchiha said, tone low, the kick dogs will have enough and bite back. One day, maybe not under your rule or one of your daughters. But one day, the branch house will have enough and not heeding the pain, they will retaliate. But tell me, what becomes of a family if the parents teach their children to hate? It's not love and unity you are showing those within your clan. It's hate and fear. Hate, prejudice and fear brought the fall of my kin. Do you want it to happen to you as well? Aika clan downfall. Catchy name, no. Sound catchier than Uchiha, even. The Ashi could not sit here and listen. Not anymore. He would not let the same thing happen to his clan that had happened to the Uchiha. They were one of the 5 ancient clans, along with Uzumaki, Senju, Uchiha and Kagaya if the legends were true. 4 of the 5 were almost extinct and only the Hika remained united. But for how long? The Uchiha had been numerous and united a decade ago, and it only took a single spark. They were a family and it was time to act like one. The elders will chew him for this, but fine. He'll deal with them for his clan. For every single member of his family. He had let the elders get away with too many things for too long. It was time to make his wife's dream come true. The dream of a united family which Hinata had seemingly inherited if what he'd caught from her and Neji's conversation a while ago was true. Time to act like the clan head he was. He looked down at the scroll. The scroll which had the real caged bird seal. The one which was meant to protect, not divide. He offered the scroll back to the blonde. How much time would it take to remove the current seals and redo this original one for all of us? The pleased expression on the boys' faces was odd to see. As if they had been struggling for something that was personal for them as much as it was personal for him. Still, the hardest it was Neji, whose look was the hardest to stand. Shock, hope, disbelief, even more hope, and was that a spark of affection? Was he seeing the true Neji again after all this time? Yes, he decided. Let his father and the other elders scream as much as they wanted. He would not stand by and watch his clan, his family be destroyed from the inside because of a bunch of megalomaniac, tradition-loving old geezers. When his Ashi had died, he had sworn never to be a head and a father like their own had been. Up till now, he had failed that promise. But now, it was time to start fulfilling it. Time to be a head and a father his family deserved. Neji couldn't help the smile that appeared on his face as he escorted the brothers out to the edge of the clan district. Naruto was smiling at him. Soon, Neji. Soon you'll be free. I think it would take a few days for your uncle to make the old coots understand that it's time to change, but by the end, he seemed as determined to bring change as Hinata. Free as a bird. Truly free, not confined into a glided cage. He thought, hope blazing in his heart. He stopped at the very edge of the district, his feet brushing the invisible line which marked Haiku property. The two had passed and were now technically outside, so he could leave, but, thank you for helping, he said quietly. Naruto smiled, waving a hand. Think nothing of it. It was the right thing to do. We're all family, after all. Sasuke pointed out. Even if no one in your clan knows it. Uchiha, Uzumaki, Senju, Hika, Kagaya, we had once been siblings and cousins who carried the same name. We're family and family sticks together. He smiled at them and bowed. Arigato, Asura-sama, Indra-sama. He said quietly. Ma, we're family. Naruto said with an eye roll, bringing him into a spontaneous short hug. Don't give us that. A moment later he was free and a bit shocked. Sasuke's black eyes were glinting, amused at his shock as much as he was amused at the blonde's actions. Greet Hinata for us, will you? The Uchiha asked. Neji nodded. Of course. We'll be back in a few days then to help remove the seal. Naruto said with a wave as both of them disappeared in swirling leaves, flames and water mixing with the wind. Neji walked back to the compound with a smile alone which he hadn't had since before his father's death on his face. Soon, they'll be free. Satisfied with the results of their work, the brothers were heading to Ichiraku Ramen to celebrate. This was a day worth celebrating. Vitra's family would soon be free and united, as she would have liked to see them, no matter what. And perhaps through this small act of justice, they could give weight to the teachings of ninja within the clan, even if the Haiku wouldn't have a name for what it was. The quest for Ramen was halted when Naruto froze in mid-step, his eyes darting around, specifically towards the Hokage mountain. Naruto's eyes narrowed on the plateau, which he couldn't see from here. Then his eyes darted to Sasuke. 2 large chakra signatures incoming. One of them full of bloodlust, with strong affinity for Suiton, the other he trailed off. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. What of the other? Naruto breathed out. The second one is an Uchiha. Naruto saw his brother's eyes widen before they narrowed. There were no words needed. Ramen forgotten, they made their way towards the Hokage monument. Whichever of the Uchiha candidates had trespassed the village border without raising an alarm. It didn't matter which one. They could be dangerous. With a series of sunshin, the two found themselves on the plateau, facing a tall man with blue-gray skin and small, shark-like eyes. Naruto noted, winkling his nose, that the guy wearing a slashed kiri headband even smelled like a shark. The long, black cloak with red-white clouds was also rather distinctive. Well, the newcomer grinned, showing a row of pointed teeth. Look what we have here, partner. The Kikijinch Kriki walks right into our footsteps. Isn't that nice? Naruto frowned. He recognized the fucker from the bingo books. Ashigaki Kisame, former of Kiri's famed 7, now one of their most dangerous missing nin. What do you want here, fish face? He demanded, violet eyes narrowed. Sharp tongue, nah. Kisame asked. You're not gonna be a smart mouth once we finish with you, fox. Will he, Itachi? Another figure appeared from behind Kisame, almost as if he'd materialized from thin air. He wore the same dark garbs as the swordman, however, he had a slashed Konoha headband. Tomo Sharingan burning in his eyes. Itachi. Sasuke spoke, his tone lilting. Hope, shock, disbelief radiated off of him so strongly that it was almost enough to distract Naruto. Almost. A second, undercover, Nin looked at Sasuke. Naruto could feel the myriad of emotions from the man just as strongly as he felt them from Sasuke, although his face was blank. Shock, joy, hope, love, regret. Long time no see, Anto. Itachi had imagined many times what his encounter with Sasuke would be like. He had never imagined that he would see Sasuke right next to Uzumaki, Senju. Naruto. It's not that he was biased or prejudiced against the blonde for his heritage or for the Bijki, held quite the opposite. He understood that if it hadn't been for the Yandames and Naruto's sacrifice, there wouldn't even be Konoha today. However, he also knew that not everyone understood that. Fear, hate and prejudice was part of human nature, as sad as it sounded, almost on a genetical level. So, Sasuke either didn't know what Naruto was or he had overcome the prejudice and had formed a friendship with the blonde anyway. Itachi liked the second option more, but considering the Sandame's laws regarding Naruto's status, the first option was more likely. Come with us peacefully, Naruto-kun, and no harm will come to the village, Itachi said, keeping up his act. In fact, he would have liked to tell the blonde to run and alert the Hokage, but Kisame was right here. Sasuke and Naruto shared a look and both of them snorted. They shared another look, a silent conversation passing between them. Do you want the Kikbi, fish face? Naruto asked, looking at Kisame. Come and get it. Itachi's lips twitched at the creative and fitting nickname. How hadn't he thought of it before? What did you just call me, little fox punk? Kisame growled, reaching for Samahata. You aren't just ugly, reeking fish but also deaf. Oh, by the Rickham. Kisame roared and charged at the blonde, who dodged swiftly. Itachi debated interfering, but then Sasuke was right in front of him and he had to catch a punch. Oh, his little brother had come a long way. That punch was pretty strong. Had Sasuke used Chakra to strengthen it? He moved to kick Sasuke, but to his shock, Sasuke caught it, his eyes glinting with amusement. Are you getting weak in your old age, Itachi? Naruto uses Chakra-enhanced strength regularly. This is nothing. Itachi twitched inwardly. Old age, heh? It seems you've picked up some of Naruto's cheekiness, hadn't you, Sasuke-kun? Sasuke's eyes morphed into the Sharingan and it showed 3 Tomo. Itachi was proud and sad all at once. What might have caused the activation of his eyes? He wished he could have been there to comfort Sasuke afterwards, as activating the Sharingan usually meant a traumatic experience. Sasuke didn't say anything, merely attacked again, and soon they were locked in a fast-paced jutsu match. Oh, Sasuke was faster than he had expected, and what was the style he was using? It was unfamiliar. It had a vague resemblance to the Uchiha Interceptor Fist, but nothing more. Had Sasuke made his own style? Then, Sasuke suddenly drew a 10, and Itachi had to duck under the first swipe, although it caught his ponytail. His eyes narrowed on Sasuke. That was my hair, Sasuke, he thought irritatedly. Okay, so no more wasting time or hair. He would have to help Kisame, as it seemed the blonde was expert at evading Kisame while delivering strong strikes, if the swordman's cursing was any indication. His eyes morphed into their higher level. Forgive me, Amto, he thought as his chakra spiked. Tsukiyomi. Moon Reader. The chakra rippled outwards, transporting them into the red-black world of Tsukiyomi. Sasuke pinned to a massive cross. Welcome to the world of Tsukiyomi, Sasuke, he said. Sasuke looked around with a critical eye and then scowled. Then, as their eyes met, Itachi's eyes went wide. He saw the 3 Tomo pattern spin wildly and then it changed into a 6-pointed star-like design. How? Since when does he? He thought in shock. Then, Sasuke spoke words he thought never to hear. From what he knew, each Mangekyou user had special, unique abilities, so this was another shock. Hanjin. Tsukiyomi. Origin. Moon Reader, Sasuke called, his voice hard, filled with so much power that it sent a shiver down Itachi's spine. Then, to his surprise, the Jinjutsu world rippled like water and changed. The red-white setup was gone, replaced by a calm night, a crescent moon hanging above their heads, giving off a soft reddish-purple light. Itachi found himself stuck in a circle made up of 6 Magatama, pure white fire floating above each symbol. As the flames flickered and pulsed, sometimes they would touch to create a complete circle. He didn't know what this was, but he had a vague feeling that the flames were not part of the Tsukiyomi world. Everything around them was made of water, as if they were on a surface on a massive lake. And there, on the water, he saw it. The water didn't reflect Sasuke. No, he saw a completely different person. Long, dark brown hair and a cylinder-dressed white kimono with black sash, the kind of archiac clothing that was rarely even mentioned in some written accounts from the warring states. It was something like the Uchiha of old might have worn, yet it wasn't. Oh, I forgot, Sasuke said softly. The water shows my reflection, does it not? Itachi's eyes snapped up. His reflection. That wasn't Sasuke there. What? Sasuke shook his head, his eyes full of sadness and love at once. Baka and Plusan. All these years I thought you'd fallen for the curse, you know. Itachi's eyes went even wider. Sasuke knew about their clan's curse. Wait, if he knew about it, did it mean he'd overcome it? Was this the end of the Uchiha's bloody history? Usually, after all, knowing meant overcoming it. For years, I pitied you for it. For years, I blamed myself for it. It was after all my fault that the clan has come to what it had been recently. Sasuke sighed. I should have listened to Asura, you know. Itachi stood stiffly, confused. The flame's heat was searing. It might have been real or it might have been the work of the Jinjutsu, but it didn't matter, so he didn't even dare moving an inch. Sasuke's fault. How the hell could the curse of their clan be his cute baby brother's fault? And who was Asura? And why was the Jinjutsu showing a different person, as if said different person were Sasuke's shadow reflection? His brother had brushed it aside, as if he had been just a bit surprised at seeing the effect of the Jinjutsu and not the reflection itself. Had Sasuke seen that strange teen man before? But my past mistakes cannot be erased. However, we can work on making a better future and I'm glad to call you my brother, you know. If you have ever overcome the curse and if not for Otatsuki, I would be caught in it still. Itachi blinked. Otatsuki. Sasuke, who was Sasuke calling his brother, and in such a way he could hear the brotherly affection in the word as clear as day. He had said the same word many times in such a way before everything had become very messy and heavy. And what did Sasuke mean by being caught in the curse still? He was a calm person, but the questions were piling up so fast and suddenly that he thought he might snap if Sasuke didn't give him a straight answer soon. Sasuke glided into his circle of restraints, not at all bothered of course. It was kind of expected, as this world was entirely of Sasuke's design, so he did things the way he pleased. Then suddenly, his baby brother's arms wrapped around him. In a hug. Sasuke was hugging him. Was this also the work of the Genjutsu? If yes, Itachi would ashamedly admit that it was working. Ever since that night, he wanted nothing more than to hold Sasuke, to hug him and explain the whole mess. I missed you, Ida and plus. Sasuke murmured, using his old childish way of address. Even his voice sounded childish for a moment, far cry from the hard seriousness when the Genjutsu had been flipped. Sasuke should be hating him. He should want him dead. He should want to burn him and not hug him. What in the name of Kami is going on here? Sasuke looked up at him, as if he'd heard his thoughts. Wait a second. Was that paint under his brother's eyes? Sasuke rolled his eyes. Yeah. It's paint, yes. I had it for years. Longer than you were alive in fact, so you're not going to talk me down about using it. I like it how it is and there it will stay. Itachi was starting to seriously worry. How could Sasuke have that paint for longer than his lifespan when he was older and not Sasuke? Oh, by the Shinju. Sasuke growled, pulling away. No, I didn't lose it. I had enough madness in one life to last till the end of times, thank you. And I will explain later. I think. Let it be, I know enough about the coup. Itachi went stiff, eyes widening again. This meeting was full of surprises. More surprises than his brain could take in one go. There wouldn't be any more, right? Right, what? He managed to choke out. I found the documents with Naruto. It was a kind of mess after the Otosuna invasion. The point is that the Shinobi Council also knows. So you're free to come back. Like now. No Akatsuki. Itachi's breath hitched. Come back, he could be here again. In Konoha. With Sasuke. But no, he had duty to the village. He had a mission to finish. I've no idea, what are you? Jiraiya and the Hokage told us you're infiltrating Akatsuki. Sasuke cut him off even before he had the chance to form a lie. Jiraiya wasn't happy, but the decision's been made. Tsunade-sensei wants you back in the village. Here. It was just that they couldn't reach you to call you back or find a safe way of pulling you out. Here is the chance. Let us catch you. Let the fish face go and tell the bastards you've been caught. And you're free to come back. No repercussions. Itachi blinked owlishly. Did you just say Tsunade-sensei, Sasuke? As in Senju Tsunade, current and Godame Hokage of Konoha. Sasuke growled, throwing his hands into the air with a growl. Are you sure you're in uchiha? You're surely as dense as Otatsuki. I can't believe one of my own could be such a baka. You sound more like a Senju or an Uzumaki. He huffed and then took a deep breath. His posture changed and his face was one of calmness again. Yes. I said that. You're home, and if Otatsuki and I have anything to say about this, you're staying. Is that fine with you? There was a heartbeat of silence. Would you stay, Itachi and plus? His voice was much calmer now, hopeful. Almost childish. Itachi didn't need to think much. He could stay with Sasuke. He could stay and make you sure his brother was safe and fine. And maybe he could pry out a few straight answers from Sasuke in the process. Hi. He said softly. I will stay. The white searing flames around him dimmed and Sasuke's mangekyou spun so fast that he couldn't even see the pattern. As the effects of his Tsukiyomi faded, both of them were transported back to the real world. Sasuke blinked, but it was clear that his brother was very confused and disoriented. Feeling a bit bad, Sasuke punched him in the gut and swept his feet from under Itachi, causing his brother to fall with a groan. Tell your partner to flee. He hissed softly. Suddenly, golden chains materialized from the ground, binding Itachi, confusing him even more. What the fuck, Itachi, come and help me. The shark-faced bastard called. Itachi looked up just as Sasuke pointed his tantrum at his heart. Sasuke looked up and noticed Asuma, Kakashi and Yamato there, fighting alongside Naruto. But his brother was drawing further away from the fight, his hand in a half-ram to keep his konfuksa in perfect shape. Ah, so Naruto was worried Itachi may find a way out no matter how unlikely. Leave, kiss him. Itachi said, a note of desperation creeping into his emotionlessness. Speak about his brother being a splendid actor. I'll find my way out. Leave. We cannot fail. Hisam swung his sword. Did that thing have scales? And put extra distance between himself and the three genin. It swung, catching Yamato and causing him to stagger back. Isum threw one last look at them, then he glared at Naruto. "We'll be back for you, fox. Come and get me, if you can, sushi-brained bastard." Naruto hissed, slamming his Mokuton-made BM onto the rock, which caused a tremor. Isum cursed and then disappeared in a water shunshin. The four of them seemed winded. Rather unusual, and, when the three Jonin joined them, Sasuke raised an eyebrow at the four. "Are you alright?" Asuma blinked at him. "Are you asking us?" "When you faced him?" he asked, making a gesture at Itachi. Sasuke shrugged. "The good thing about Jinjutsu, Sarutobi-san, that if you have enough skill and the means, all Jinjutsu can be turned around and the victim becomes the preparator. He underestimated my abilities and the Uzumaki chains that held the fox of decades and still hold him so." He glanced at Itachi. "He's not going anywhere we don't want him to go." Asuma snorted again. "You two are dangerous little menaces, you know. Kids your age shouldn't have so much skill and power. We aren't simple kids, Sarutobi-san." Naruto shot back. "Your students may be lazy or fangirlish, but we know what we want in life. And we know what we have to do to get there. And we're going to get there, sooner or later, but we're going to get there." Sasuke smiled at the words. "Well said, Otanto." After hours-long session, telling everything to the Hokage and Jiraiya he had gathered so far, they had let him walk free. Tsunade-sama had promised that the mess around the massacre will be cleared with the civilians as well as it had been with the shinobi. Although, for the sake of appearances, he would get seal restraints on his chakra for a few weeks, and then, if he wished, he could be fully reinstated as a shinobi of Konoha. Or you could retire to lead a calmer life. The Hokage offered, her tone softer. "You've done more than many shinobi throughout their whole career. The decision is yours." Itachi gave a nod. "Thank you, Hokage-sama. I will think on it." And, to Itachi's surprise, it was Naruto who walked through the only door of the room. The blonde Jinchuriki's face was completely calm and collected. "May I escort him, Hokage-sama?" "You may, Naruto." "Oh, the seal." the Hokage said. Naruto glanced at him, his violet eyes sharp. Then, the blonde bit his own finger to draw blood and grabbed his hand, turning it. Itachi watched in quiet fascination as Naruto pressed his bleeding finger onto his wrist and channeled his chakra. His breath hitched in shock for someone so young. Naruto surely had strong chakra. He had met Uzumaki Kushina a few times, but he didn't remember the excitable redhead having such potent chakra, not even she had such chakra, despite her lineage. Uzumaki Fukin Shiki. Haikai Fukin. Uzumaki sealing style. Closing seal, Naruto said. The blood formed into a small circular seal as the chakra sunk into his system, clasping down on his entire body so hard that it drove the breath out of his lungs, which was bad considering his illness. He had hard time breathing anyway, but this was very, very bad. He couldn't help the wince that deformed his features for a second. Naruto looked at him. Gomen, Uchiha-san. I keep forgetting that unlike me, not everyone is used to seals usually present on their body, nor they are used to my heavy chakra. Heavy is the understatement of the century. Itachi thought. Instead, he shook his head and stood up slowly. No harm done, Naruto-kun. Naruto turned to Tsunade, and the Hokage nodded. Both of you may go. Naruto, you and Sasuke report for training the day after tomorrow. And don't be late. The blonde nodded. Hi, sensei. Itachi blinked at that. Did Tsunade train both his little brother and Naruto? If yes, that would explain the sloppier version of the chakra-enhanced strength he'd noticed. Sasuke's, Naruto grabbed his arm, and then they were both gone. They landed in front of a nice little house, right on the border of the merchant and the clan district. Naruto bit his hand again, the wound from before was gone without a trace. Interesting. Drawing blood. He swiped the blood finger over the gate and channeled some chakra. Hanji lit up around the center, and then the gate clicked open. Naruto pushed it wide and gestured for him to walk in. Welcome to the Namikaze estate. Your new home, for the time of your probation, he said, making air quotes. Make yourself at home, Itachi-san. Itachi walked in tentatively and then allowed the whiskered blonde to lead. Itachi will do just fine, Naruto-kun. He said, no need to be so formal. I should thank you, I suppose. From what I've observed you and Sasuke are close. Naruto chuckled and nodded. You could say that, I suppose. From my understanding your presence had helped him overcome the trauma of that night and I owe you for that. Thank you for being there for him when I couldn't. He said quietly. Naruto waved him off with a smile as he opened the door. Nonsense, Itachi. He's important to me. Of course I'd keep an eye on him, no matter what. They took off their shoes and Naruto led him into the kitchen. Nai-sama. We're home, Naruto called. Itachi blinked at that. Nai-sama. Did Naruto mean Sasuke by that? Naruto gestured for him to sit down and Itachi did just that. There was no answer from Sasuke whatsoever. Nai-sama. Naruto called again, this time his voice sharper. I brought Itachi home. The words worked almost like magic. A whirl of fire appeared in the room to reveal Sasuke. Sorry Itoto. I was just speaking with Neji. It seems the words we exchanged with the Hyuga are working. Hinata and Hiashi seem to be determined not to be caught in a blood feud. Naruto grinned. Oh, does that mean I can saunter over to start removing that stupid seal from the branch family? Sasuke hummed. Not yet, but close. But don't think I'm letting you go alone. I'm going to go with you. The last thing we need is for the old geezers to try something nasty. But just let them. I'd gladly introduce them to amaterasu. Naruto rolled his eyes. I can protect myself, Nai-sama. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Boar in the forest. Sasuke said seriously, which caused the blonde to groan, and suddenly there was a dark rain cloud above his head. Am I never going to live that down? He murmured. Sasuke huffed, walking closer. No, Toto. But I suppose I should kin to thank you and Shiro. If not for that boar, I wouldn't have had my Sharingan so early. Itachi felt a bit left out. The two obviously acted like brothers. Were brothers in everything but blood, but what was going on with the Hyuga? And what boar in what forest? When? But Indra. Naruto whined softly. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. You're not going alone to the Hyuga grounds. I trust Neji of course, but unless the seal is removed, he can't really stand up to help you. Naruto's eyes narrowed. But I can. Sasuke's eyes flashed with the Sharingan. No, Toto. Naruto grunted. Fine, Nai-sama. He turned away, grabbing some pots and pans and then walking to the fridge. What do you two want to eat? Itachi blinked at the sudden change in topic. What the hell was going on here? Sasuke stole him a glance and then smiled. Onigiri, please. Oh, so Sasuke remembered it was his favorite. It's nice, and he hadn't eaten onigiri in ages. Gonen's cooking wasn't exactly safe to eat, and he refused to even acknowledge that one time when Deidara. No, stop. He thought, don't think about that. Or any of them ever again. Naruto stopped and looked up. Huh. Then, his violet eyes settled on him and Itachi felt a bit uncomfortable. Almost like an open book, the thoughts about the other Akatsuki members fleeing in a second. The blonde smiled. Ah, so it's a favorite. Well, then origiri it shall be. Any special wishes, Itachi? Itachi hummed. Well, I like it with seaweed. He said. Naruto hummed, looking at Sasuke, who chuckled. Fine, fine. You do the cooking, I will get the seaweed. And then Sasuke was gone in a fiery shunshin without a word. Itachi sat there by the table, watching as Naruto cooked the rice for their food and pondered the mystery that his little brother and the Uzumaki made up. The oddest pair ever, and not just because of the different clans. For one, how did Sasuke have the mangyeko? Secondly, why had Naruto called his baby brother Indra? Naruto. The blonde glanced at him, not stopping and preparing their food. Hi, I think I heard you say Indra, and if I'm not mistaken, you meant my little brother. This time, the Uzumaki did stop and turned to him for a moment, studying him with sharp, wise violet eyes. Sharper and wiser eyes than a teen his age had the right to have. Observant, he murmured, turning back to his task. Yes, I called him that. Why? Naruto hummed. Cause that's his name. Itachi hummed too. No. His name is Sasuke. He's my brother, you know. Naruto huffed. He's as much Sasuke as much Indra. And he was my brother first, Itachi-san, so I get to call him whichever name I feel like. Itachi's lips parted ever so slightly to speak, but he held back instead. What the hell had been going on in Konoha while he'd been gone? And what was this identity mess Naruto and Sasuke were struggling with? Kami help him, these two were worse than Sasori and Deidara when they argued about art. Hiashi frowned. Since early morning, he'd been in the Hyuga library trying to find a copy of the document Naruto had shown him. It was a valid contract, so there had to be a copy in here as well. Hinata and Neji had come with him when they heard what he was looking for. It's not that he questioned the validity of the document, far from it, but he knew that several of the elders would try to undermine this effort to unite the family. Despite his promise to Hisashi and his wife, he'd never acted on it, afraid the elders might try tearing his family apart even more. Sadly, the one who was the staunchest supporter of that abomination for a seal was his own father. The thought still made him frown. And the old coot wondered why Hinata avoided him so much. He sighed in frustration and carefully rearranged the many scrolls, just as they'd been. He threw a look at his daughter from across the room, countless documents spread in front of her. As she caught his gaze, she shook her head in denial and started to rearrange the pile. Damn the long history of our clan. He thought, as he felt a headache forming, we'll never find that damnable contract. Hiashi-sama. Neji called, hurrying towards him, holding a scroll container not unlike the one Naruto had shown him. I found it. His face was calm, but Hiashi caught the little excitement underlining his tone. It warmed his heart to hear it. Neji was so much like his brother. He smiled a bit and patted his nephew's shoulder, taking the scroll. Wonderful. And, I think, it's time we acted as a family, Neji. He said in a lower tone, call me uncle. Surprise flickered through Neji's features, but the smile that formed on his face was enough of an answer. Hiashi twisted the contract in his hand, looking at his daughter, who had also approached, hearing Neji's words. I'll deal with the elders and gather the clan. Would you two please bring the infamous duo? Neji smirked and Hinata smiled widely. Of course, Odo-san. Itachi opened the door of the Namika's house as the bell rang. Two Hyuga stood in the door, about the same age as his little brother and Naruto. The girl just looked confused as she noticed him and the boy immediately stiffened, hovering her and taking a cautious step back. No doubt he had recognized him. "Is it, Itachi?" Naruto called. Itachi took a step back, turning towards the blonde. "Two friends of yours, I would guess, Naruto-kun." Hyuga. Naruto perked up and darted forwards, peeking out. "Ah, Neji, Hinata. Nice to see you. How's it going?" "Not to be rude or a jinx," Neji murmured, pointing at him, "but that's Uchiha Itachi, right?" Naruto's rank missing nin famed for killing his clan. Itachi winced inwardly at the words. Will that be how the world remembered him? Clan killer Itachi. Naruto hummed. Yes. And there are several things the village doesn't know about the Uchiha incident, and I would guess our age group knows even less. I and Sasuke know what we do, cause we came across things after the invasion. The point is that Itachi's under house arrest until everything gets cleared up. And nope, he can't use Chakra, one of my seals is blocking him, so you won't get fried like Naruto tried to do the last time we trained together. The girl Hinata relaxed with a small huff. That's nice to hear. Sasuke-kun's fire is not nice. Naruto chuckled. Trust me, I know. So? What brings you here? Itachi saw the massive grins that formed on the two Hyuga's faces, rather uncharacteristic, knowing how stoic and arrogant that bunch could be. Frighteningly similar to how the Uchiha had been, so seeing the light expressions on their faces was odd. What was next? Would there be snow in the village right now, in the middle of the summer? At this point, he wouldn't be more confused or concerned. Odo-san found the copy of the contract. Hinata said. He's speaking with the elders now. He requested your and Sasuke's presence to do your part, as you promised. He asked us to escort you there. Itachi blinked in confusion. What contract? And what did Naruto and Sasuke have to do with it? And how did the Hyuga Council get involved in this? Naruto grinned, and even the sun seemed brighter, all of a sudden. Naruto should be back in a few minutes and we can go. Itachi rubbed his temples. When the two were back from the Hyugas from whatever they would be doing there, Itachi swore to get his answers, even if he had to blackmail the two with their favorite foods. It would cost half the money he earned from the Akatsuki mission, but he'd rather be broke than going insane with all the questions floating about in his head. The Ashi matched the angry, disbelieving glares of the elders without a twitch. As expected, no one was happy about the redesigning of the seal. His father scowled at him. You would condemn us to chaos, Hiashi? His father asked darkly. The moment the branch house is free, they will revolt and the clan will fall apart. His eyes narrowed. And they have a reason to revolt, father. Enough is enough. I stood by and allowed you to brand his Ashi like a piece of kettle. He shook his head. I will not allow you to tear my daughters apart as you did with me and my brother. You would break hundreds of years of tradition for your weak daughter, an elderly woman demanded. Hiashi did not even bother remembering her name. Hiashi's eyes narrowed on her and he released a wave of killing intent. Hinata has my wife's love for family. Compassion is not weakness. Strength lies in unity. Time for the clan to unite. Besides, Senju Uzumaki Naruto holds a copy of the blood contract made between our ancestors and his. He is very much aware of the seal having been twisted. No one in Konoha likes our use of the seal. If he takes the contract before the Shinobi Council and the Hokage, they will support him. It will mean a blood feud between the Hyuga and the Uzumaki. Considering the closeness, the Senju and the Uchiha may be dragged into it as well. We will be banished from here. No village takes in a clan that has an ongoing blood feud with another, much less 3 clans. Those 3 clans may be reduced to 1 and 2 members, but if they join forces, it will mean the Hyuga clan against the entire village, because make no mistake, Konoha will follow them. They are talented and the descendants of the founders. Their words will be heard. He said in a steely tone. The elders sat there, frozen, looking at him in disbelief and anger. The seals will be redone. Any questions? Hiashi declared strongly, his killing intent spiking in silent warning. Anyone who disagrees will answer to me and soon the clan. One person is nothing against an entire clan who were promised freedom. Naruto walked into the main house of the Hyuga district looking as confident as ever, even though he didn't feel confident at all. He had massive reserves, but removing so many seals and redoing even more would be a challenge, even for him. I'll push a bit more chakra through to get purified. Kurama offered quietly. Combined with your big reserves, it should be enough, although you may find yourself knocked out at the very end. Naruto smiled inwardly. Arigato, Naisama. And I can share my chakra too. Sasuke said quietly. I can't hope to deal with such complex fuinjutsu, but I can share my chakra with you. Naruto hummed and they stepped into the room, which had been chosen as the place of gathering. There, at the end of the room, were 2 seats prepared, the symbols of the Uchiha hanging above one, while the other had the Uzumaki spiral placed in the middle of the Senju. But, to their shock, above those, hung a bigger symbol, as if encompassing the 3 known clan symbols. A black crescent moon with a circle on white. The Otatsuki banner, which they hadn't seen anywhere since remembering, save for on their own possessions. Naruto threw a look at Neji as he pointed at the symbol. What's that doing up there? Amusement flashed through the Chunin's pale eyes. The Oji-san asked about the symbols you carried on your backs. I told them it was your personal invention to show your brotherly bond. That the circle was to symbolize the spiral, while the crescent moon could be passed off as the red half of the uchiha, just with switched position. Naruto couldn't help the laughter that escaped him, and Sasuke was chuckling too. Shrewd. A real shinobi. Neji grinned back. Why thank you. He made a gesture. Take a seat. There are many of my relatives who have the seal, so I'd think it will take a while. Naruto shared a look with his brother and then shrugged. They walked over to their designated spots and sat down. Then, the tatami doors slipped open and they watched the entire Hyuga clan pour in, like a wave, whispering and murmuring, throwing them strange looks. Once everyone arrived, the crowd quieted down somewhat, but only partially. Naruto could feel their curiosity and confusion. If he had to guess, Hiashi hadn't exactly been open about what the Akashin was. Then, a few minutes later, Hiashi himself walked in, Hanabi by his side, followed by the sour-looking elders. As the head walked in, the crowds murmured and bowed deeply to their clan head, only for Hiashi to stop a few feet away from where he and Sasuke sat, turning towards the branch house. We gathered here today for a change. Today will be a new start for the Hyuga clan. Time for us to stand united, as a family. His gaze flickered across the main branch members, who were now all looking interested. From this day forth, we are one, without differences. The branch house will no longer exist. You will no longer have to fear pain and punishment for speaking up. No child will have to fear the seal, not siblings of the main house, nor the branch members. He glanced at his daughters and Hanabi's eyes went wide. From this day forward, the caged bird seal will not exist. Instead, he threw a meaningful look at the elders. All of us will have a seal meant to protect our eyes. A seal meant to protect our family and secrets. To show unity and not division. From this day forth, we will all have the white bird seal, for our protection. There was a long moment of silence and then someone at the back cried out. We're free. Long live Hiashi-sama. A cheerful chant went up in the room, praising Hiashi. Naruto smiled, as the shock and disbelief in the room was replaced by pure elation of the crowd. Hiashi then turned around and walked up to them. Looking him in the eyes. Naruto matched the pale gaze with a smile on his face. This was the family Mitra would have wanted. This was the leader the clan needed. The Hyuga head knelt in front of him, his face unmoving, but Naruto could sense his lighter emotions. He was as relived as the rest of his clan. Well, bar a few elders, but he had a feeling Hiashi would deal with them gradually. Wowed you, Senju Dono? Naruto grinned, biting his finger to draw blood. Gladly, Hyuga Dono. He pressed his bloody finger on the man's forehead and carefully drew the array. Once he was done, he flared his chakra. Uzumaki Fuin Shiki Hoedo Tori Fuin. Kasei Ka. Uzumaki sealing style. Whitebird seal. Activate. A seal formed on the man's forehead in a circular pattern, resembling a sun. It glowed white gold with the chakra, and Hiashi winced a bit. Once it was done, Naruto nodded. It will fade in a few hours. Well, it's active. It does not show in the same way as the other seal, so no need to consciously cover it. However, it will become visible upon a certain amount of chakra being put into it. In fact, the smallest amount is enough. It can seal your eyes on the wearer's own will, so if you feel yourself in such a situation, a small spike of chakra and your byakugan is inaccessible to the enemy. If you happen to survive said encounter and your seal is active, it will revert back to the basic state within 12 hours. As long as the individual has Astati chakra circulation and heartbeat. Hiashi nodded and Naruto saw the flash in his eyes. He'd managed to impress the stoic man. Finally done, Naruto dipped his head. Praise the father of Uzumaki Midoheim, Uzumaki Ashina. I used his notes and the one I've shown you to create and improve this one. Hiashi nodded, walking over to Hinata. Hinata was the next one to step closer, a determined look on her face, but Naruto waved her off. Wait a second, Hinata. I would first remove the current seals because it might put some strain on your clansmen's bodies. While they recover, I can do yours. Hinata nodded with a smile. It's fine. Do it, Naruto-kun. Naruto sighed, looking at Neji. Would you, please? I have a feeling no one would dare moving just yet despite the demonstration. And if this works the way I think it will, I can connect everyone and release the other seals in one go. Neji hummed, taking off his headband to reveal the caged bird seal. He carefully walked over and knelt in Hiashi's spot. Do it, Naruto. The blonde placed his hand on the seal. Fair warning. It may hurt. But Sasuke will be able to dull the pain with a little medical chakra. Then you take a break to give your body time to recuperate and I'll remove the other seals. Once everyone is seal-free, you come back after the other seals are done. Alright. Naruto groaned, feeling lightheaded from all the chakra use. After hours of work, finally all the branch members were free of the twisted seals and he could start on working the new one. Despite the pain that the removal caused, every single Hyuga was smiling, some even grinning as they stood opposite from him. Sasuke gripped his hand, raising it in a half ram. Ninshu. Chikura Kyoyo. Hoju. Ninja Creed. Chakra sharing. Replenishment. Naruto's breath hitched as he felt the warm electro-loose chakra flood his system, mixing with Kurama's, replenishing his reserves and dulling the ache in his body. He heard gasps as the chakra formed a visible flame around them, no doubt. Many hadn't expected their chakras to be so powerful. After a few moments, he let go of Sasuke's hand. Your lifesaver, Nai-sama. Sasuke rolled his eyes. Someone has to make sure you don't pass out. I used far less chakra than you, so I could share a bit. Perhaps we could take a break. Hinata offered. I doubt you two had a proper breakfast with how soon we appeared at your door. Maybe some food would help. Naruto beamed. You are a genius, Hinata. Definitely would help the dizziness. Naruto ignored the shocked looks the former branch members gave him as he settled among them. He told Hiashi that some trust from the clan might help along the process and that he'd eat. Among them, well, Sasuke would answer any and all questions him and the elders might have about the new seal. Luckily for him, the head had agreed and he saw a flash of respect in the man's eyes at that. So here he was, his eyes set on an empty spot next to a mother and son. If their similar chakras were any clue. May I have a seat? He asked the mother. The woman's pale eyes went wide and then she bowed. Of course, Senju-sama. Naruto settled and waved her off. Naruto will do. He raised an eyebrow at her. She tipped her head again. Hiyori. Naruto hummed. Hiyori-san, are you a shinobi, like Neji Nai? The small boy next to Hiyori asked, an excited gleam in his pale eyes. His eyes had the same lavender tint as Hinata's. It made him look cute. Hikaru. His mother chested him with a look. Naruto grinned. No harm in curiosity, Hiyori-san. In fact, if your son wants to be a shinobi, sometimes asking the right questions may save his and his comrades' lives. He took a bite of his food and nodded to the boy. Hikaru-kun. Both me and my brother are shinobi, like Neji and Hinata. Hikaru blinked. Huh? He's your brother? But you look so different. Even your chakra feels different. Naruto drew up short, eyes widening a bit in surprise. You can feel what my chakra is like. Hikaru nodded. Warm. Sunny. It's like in a clearing in spring. And Sasuke's? He probed gently. The little boy turned toward Sasuke, his eyes narrowed for a bit before he looked back. Warm. And prickly but in a nice way. Like a thunderstorm in summer. Different from yours, but still similar. Naruto smiled, ruffling the small boy's black hair. Hiyori-san, you have a budding sensor here. And to answer your question, we have different parents. We have different clans and parents. But at the same time, we're brothers. Because we promised to be brothers, to take care of each other, to protect each other, no matter what. He's my precious person, you know. And you always protect your precious people. The wide-eyed look of the boy told the blonde that he had found another follower. Another child who'll remember the words and protect his precious people. It warmed his heart. Sasuke watched as his brother's chakra blazed in a blue-green flame, running along the many golden chains that were wrapped around the former branch members. Each of them had the starting kanji of the seal drawn on their foreheads with blood, and now Naruto was intending to speed up the sealing process. Naruto himself was sitting in a complex seal circle, drawn with chakra-infused ink, countless chains reaching out from his back to the many men, women and children. The elders were frowning at their new seals, but Sasuke chose to ignore them. He was sure that the newly reformed family courted Hiashi, Hinata, Neji and even young Hanabi, who seemed to have gained a new admiration for Naruto, were going to keep the few displeased in line. Naruto did a few seals as his chakra blazed even more, cracking the wooden floor beneath them, which caused everyone to go wide-eyed and gasping. Uzumaki Fuin Shiki Zashoku. Hoedo Tori Fuin. Uzumaki sealing style. Multiplication. Whitebird's seal. Sasuke watched as the single kanji all formed into the seals as the chakra took effect. After a few minutes, Naruto opened his eyes and they seemed to be glowing with chakra, making his violet eyes eerily light in color. Kasei Ka. Activate. The seals on the foreheads glowed golden for a moment and then suddenly the chakra chain shattered loudly, the broken pieces glinting before disappearing, some not even reaching the floor. Naruto groaned and fell and Sasuke leapt from his seat, chakra cracking under his feet as he propelled himself forwards. The Todo. He called, just barely catching the blonde. Naruto gave a tired chuckle, his eyes fluttering closed. Done. They're free and safe. He muttered. Sasuke hummed. Yeah, they are. As Naruto's head told to the side, Sasuke sighed. The previously deathly quiet room went up in worried shush and calls. Sasuke sighed, looking at the Hyuga. Just chakra exhaustion. He said. A more severe case, I suppose, but nothing he won't pull through. Still. Hiashi spoke suddenly, stepping forwards. One of our medics should check him. Sasuke nodded. I'd be grateful. A young woman, around Kakashi's age, darted forwards, her light brown hair braided to the left. May I? She asked, glancing tentatively at him and then her clan head. Hiashi nodded. Please, Hanami. She hurried over and her hands glowed with the familiar green chakra, her byakugan active. For several minutes, her hands kept roaming his body and then she pulled back. I helped along the healing of his strained circulatory system. As long as he doesn't do anything more than a civilian for a few days, he should be fine. Just make sure he eats and drinks enough." Sasuke nodded and gently picked the blonde up. "Arigato gozaimasu, Hanami-san." He looked at Hiashi. "If you'll excuse me, Hyuga Dono, I would like to get my brother home. I'm sure he'd appreciate waking up in his own bed." Hiashi nodded. "By all means." Sasuke stole a glance at the still shocked clan before he allowed his Shunshin to carry both of them away. Itachi was a bit worried, then after hours-long absence Sasuke landed in the living room carrying a passed-out, pale Naruto, a thin layer of sweat glimmering on the whiskered face. A spark of worry reared its head in his mind. The blonde was important to Sasuke, and how could he forget how close his parents had been to Naruto's? Kushina-sen was even Sasuke's godmother. Holy, he stood up, his book abandoned. "What happened, Sasuke? And, you should go to the hospital." Sasuke shook his head. "He's just exhausted. Sleeping and proper nourishment shall do the trick as long as we pay attention. He won't be using chakra for a few days." Then, Sasuke walked towards the rooms and Itachi remained there, standing in confusion and shock. One a literal chakra powerhouse coming back passed out from chakra exhaustion after both boys had been absent for hours, presumably with the Hyugas. Sasuke himself seemed a bit winded but also pleased. Enough is enough. He decided at last, "I want to know what's going on here." Tsunade stared at Hiashi. She could do nothing but stare. "Would you please repeat that, Hiashi-san?" she asked as the entire shinobi council sat silently, staring wide-eyed at the Hyuga leader. "Thank you for allowing Naruto access to your old home, Hokage-sama, and thus to the techniques carefully confined by your family. Naruto has removed and redone our seals, and now the Hyuga stand united and safer than ever. Although he had been carried off by his brother passed out, I do hope he will be fine. Would you be so kind to inform us of his condition at a later date?" Tsunade took a deep breath. "Are you saying that Naruto has removed every single cage bird seal from your clan members?" Hiashi nodded, his eyes gleaming pleased as he stood up and handed her a stack of papers. "Every single one of them. And the pup did another seal, for all of you to protect all your eyes equally?" Tsunade asked, her eyes wide. The patriarch nodded to his former teammate. "Indeed." Tsunade watched as Hiashi flared his chakra and a seal appeared on his forehead, resembling a white, simple sun, two of its rays running down of the man's face, a stop an inch or so below his eyes. Tsunade groaned as she looked at the stack of paperwork this meant for her. This may have been the right thing to do. But couldn't Kushina's meddlesome brat of a son change the world in a way that meant less paperwork for her? With another groan and uncaring of what those gathered thought of her, Tsunade reached for the bottle of sake hidden in the lowest shelf of the desk. She popped it open and without getting a cup, she took a few huge gulps. She was so going to skin Naruto and Sasuke. They were so going to pay for the extra paperwork they just gave her. She looked at the papers and the single bottle she was holding. "I need more alcohol if I want to survive this," she decided. Naruto blinked rapidly as he found himself in the bright, sunlit clearing of his mindscape, which then continued on and turned into a vast desert, the sun's heat searing on his skin. Shukaku lay curled in the sand, studying him with a pleased expression. Gaara stood a few feet from him, just where the sand and grass mixed, creating an odd sort of border between their two minds. He grinned at the sight of his two brothers. "Shukaku Nai-sama, Gaara. Nice to see you again." He greeted as he walked up to the Redeed and gave him a quick hug. "Asura-kun," greeted the Tanuki. Gaara smiled and returned the hug fiercely. "I'm glad to see you as well." The Redeed dipped his head towards Kurama. "A pleasure to see you again." Kurama gave a huff of acknowledgement. Naruto and Gaara sat down, while Shukaku and Kurama just observed quietly, enjoying the peace that surrounded them. "How are things going in Suna?" Naruto asked. Gaara sighed. "A bit of a mess, since we don't have a Kazukiage. Right now War Council leads the village, but I'm unsure how long that will work." Naruto nodded. "Hope you'll figure it out soon. How are the people treating you?" Everyone heard of the redone seal and they noticed that I sleep and eat just as they do. The fact that Temari and Kankuro are trying to make an effort for us to feel like a family again also helps. Most of the people are wary, but there are a few who are actually willing to tentatively speak with me. And since I beat Baki-sensei and Temari in spars fairly without drawing blood, well, I think it was another good thing. Since we're without a leader, I've been trying to help the village more, and with Temari and Kankuro right there with me, I think it's working. The blonde beamed. "That's wonderful. Would you want me to help you use Shukaku's chakra a bit more? You can use it even without full transformation." He paused, looking at the sand demon. "That is, if you don't mind, Nai-sama." Shukaku hummed. "Not at all. Teach him some of your Fuin and Juinjutsu as well, so he can use mine too. Maybe even combine them. Gods know Suna is in need of a few who can deal with that art. And if I have to trust someone else with seals who isn't you, let it be my Jinchuriki. Oh, and he has Jinten, and not only because I have it. It runs in his family. I'm sure you can teach him more about it in a way I can't. You humans use it differently than I do." Naruto nodded, turning to the Redeed. "So? What do you say? Would you like me to teach you? Gaara smiled widely. I'd be honored, Naruto hummed. So where to start? Oh, yes. Fuin and Juinjutsu. He snapped his fingers and paper and ink appeared out of nowhere, causing Gaara to raise an eyebrow. Naruto laughed. This is a mind space, so you can manipulate it to an extent. What you want here to exist will exist in a way. Also, time goes differently here than in the real world, so it's also beneficial for certain forms of training. Like reaching inner balance or honing theoretical knowledge, so when you use it in the real world, it becomes a sort of instinct. Of course, this does not mean you can neglect training outside of your mind, but as a Jinchuriki, you have a bit of advance over normal shinobi. I see. Gaara answered, his face turning serious. It's useful. Does this mean I could train with Shukaku without endangering the village? Naruto nodded. To an extent. But the moment you start consciously drawing his chakra from his seal, it will encase your body and show effects in the real world as well. So we have to train outside the village. Gaara noted, tone serious. Naruto nodded. Yes. So back to seals. It's quite simple, once you understand the basics, as it is the basics you twist more and more, the more complex seal you want. Now, Shukaku has a great knowledge of them as well, so he may also be able to help you if you think you lose me somewhere during an explanation. As I understand that I have an unnaturally good understanding of them. He grabbed the brush. So, the first step is improving your calligraphy and chakra control. You will have to work on your control alone, but the rest we can help with. So, show me how well you can write these, he said, drawing a few kanji on the paper. Once he was done, he offered the brush. Gaara took it and copied the kanji, and Naruto grinned. Not bad. In fact, your writing is better than Sasuke's. Don't tell him, but his handwriting is chicken scratch. He muttered. The words drew a round of laughter from the Redeed and the two Biju, the great beings, amused more than Gaara, as they had always known Indra as a perfectionist. So hearing that he was downright terrible at something was overly hilarious for them. Once Gaara was done, he pulled away the brush, looking at Naruto expectantly. The blonde ruffled his fellow Jinchuriki's hair. Nice, Atoto. A bit of practice in the waking world, and I think I'll be able to teach you a lot of things that aren't Uzumaki-only kind of seals. You have big reserves, but still not as big as my natural source, and I'm a bit unsure how those seals would react to Shukaku's special kind of chakra. Gaara hummed. Even if you teach me 1/5 of what you know, I'm confident I might just be considered a seal master in the village. Suna excels in wind-based jutsu and puppetry, but seals, it's a complex art that few know. There's Chiyo Obasama, but at this point, I'm sure you know much more than she does. Naruto nodded. Well, remind the world then that you were taught by an Uzumaki. He grinned. So back to the topic, he gestured at the seal. There are several seals in the world, but perhaps for you, the first sort I'm telling about is the even and uneven numbered ones and how they are connected to Shukaku's own special Juinjutsu. The next day, when Temari walked into her little brother's room, she found him practicing calligraphy and a set of odd symbols she'd never seen before. She stood above his shoulder for a good 5 minutes. She'd never seen Gaara so calm and focused before she spoke up. What are you doing, Gaara? She asked. Gaara froze mid-stroke and threw her an irritated look before placing the brush back in the pot of ink. Practicing calligraphy, Nisan. Temari huffed, rolling her eyes. I can see that. But what for? I want to learn Fuinjutsu. It corresponds with one of Shukaku's abilities, and I want to use those abilities perfectly so I can help and protect you. Temari felt a bit bad for crushing his dream, while also touched that he wanted to protect them. Not to crush your hopes, Atoto, but the only one who can use Fuinjutsu in the village is Chiyo Obasama, and I doubt she knows enough of Shukaku's abilities to teach you in such a manner. Gaara shook his head. I never said I need her help. Then how are you hoping to learn, Gaara? Gaara crossed his arms, managing to look bored and serious at once. You're forgetting about a certain Kyuubi Jinchuriki. He's a Senju and an Uzumaki. Both clans were known for their knowledge in Fuinjutsu. In fact, if you remember our history lesson, the Uzumaki and their village Izushio were destroyed by Kumo, Iwa and Kiri. They were so well versed in seals and Kinjutsu that it took the 3 enemy villages several weeks to entirely crush the village. An Uzumaki seal master was capable of taking out half a platoon of shinobi on their own. Temari's eyes went white and she paled. Shit, how could she have forgotten that tidbit of history? Now she knew from where the whiskered blonde's name was so familiar. Suddenly she was so very glad that the blonde and the Uchiha were their allies. But he's miles from here, Gaara. Okay, maybe he is a certified seal master, but how can he teach you anything? Gaara grinned mischievously, the expression odd on his previously serious and bloodthirsty face. He's a Jinchuriki like me. Our Biju can form a connection, which we can use to meet. I met him last night and he started teaching me about seals. And since time goes differently in there than out here, I think I managed to pick up fairly much of the theory he'd been explaining. Temari paled even more. and Uzumaki teaching her little brother about seals only cause he was being nice as Jinchuriki to Jinchuriki. And Shukaku was known for his special curse marks as well. Note to self. Don't ever piss off Gaara in the future. She thought, sweat forming on her forehead. It was odd, Itachi decided. No. It was downright creepy. He had gone out to buy a few things to the market. Naruto's special tracking restriction seal making sure he would not leave a certain radius of the Namika's residence. It was the only way he was allowed to leave the house, and even then, there was a squad of Anbu nearby, watching his every move, like hawks. Despite most of the Uchiha mess being known, some of the village were still unsure of his loyalty, so he had to endure the probation. He had come out early to avoid most of the people and their whispers and stares, but he had run into several Hyuga. And all of them were smiling and chatting airily, as if there was nothing wrong with the had seen. Hyuga smiling and heard them didn't even need the Sharingan for the strange traumatizing experience to be burned into his mind forever, with no hope of forgetting it. Damn the Uchiha genetics and the naturally eidetic memory. He would have liked to have a few words with the first wielder of the Sharingan, whoever it said person was the progenitor of an entire clan, which means they should have had some control over their power. Presumably, great power. Could this person not have done something with the memorizing abilities? Like turning them off completely when the Sharingan was inactive. The most shocking thing was, when he was done with the shopping, paper bags in hand, he ran into a few academy students maybe a year or so from graduation. Well, 2 students, a girl and a boy, both of them Hyuga. Their eyes dead giveaway of their heritage. The girl was the one to approach him first, the boy following her more cautiously. Are you related to Sasuke-sama? The boy asked seriously. Sama? Did the kid just address his little brother with Itachi took a deep breath. No, he's not going to lose it in the middle of the street. People still feared him, he didn't need the village to think he was raving mad. Because he was, but he wasn't mad. Yes, he's my brother. He said. The girl scowled at the boy. Don't be ridiculous, Hideki. You heard them at the compound. Sasuke-sama was Naruto-sama's brother, but he looks just like him. The boy shot back, making an angry gesture. Actually, Itachi cut them off, feeling awkward as he noticed a terrified Hyuga woman watching from a safe distance. Sasuke is my Itoto. We're both Uchihas. Naruto and Sasuke are brothers because they have sworn it. They have different parents. But they grew up together, so they are also kind of like brothers. He explained as simply as possible. See, Hitsuyo. Hideki shot back at the girl. I told you they are related. The girl pouted and crossed her arms. The boy scowled at her before offering a small basket. Would you please take this to Sasuke-sama and Naruto-sama? We'd like to thank them for helping us, the boy said cheerfully. Itachi noted distantly that Hideki had the same sunny disposition as Naruto, if only with the childish innocence still mostly present. Feeling even more awkward now, very aware of the poor woman's terrified gaze on him, he took the basket from the boy and nodded. I will give it to them when I make it home. The girl's eyes went wide. You live with them? Oh ho, childish hero worship. The Uchiha prodigy noted amusedly. This will be fun to watch in the future. He nodded calmly. Yes. In the Namika's house. But wait, Hideki murmured, if Sasuke-sama and Naruto-sama are brothers, and you're Sasuke-sama's brother, does that mean you're also Naruto-sama's brother? Itachi blinked at the unexpected question, chewing it over in his mind. Could he call the blonde his brother? Well, their parents had been very close, and Sasuke did treat the blonde as a brother without thinking. So, in an odd sort of way, perhaps it made Naruto his brother too. The blonde was certainly making an effort to make him feel at home and at ease. Well, I think so. He said, a bit unsure. Sugoi. The children squealed. I would want brothers like them too. The girl said. The woman gathered her courage and marched over, grabbing the children. She bowed her head to hide the fear in her eyes, but Itachi saw it anyway. Now, don't keep up Uchiha-san. I think he's quite in a hurry. Itachi shook his head. No harm done, Hyuga-san. Have a nice day. The children waved at him excitedly as the woman steered them towards the clan district. Itachi huffed. This was so awkward. And even if the village labeled him a missing nin for it again, he's going to keep the fanboys from his little brother. And Naruto too. He was the eldest of the 3 and he was responsible for them. He refused to let the 2 boys know the horrors of a fan club. Coughing, Naruto's eyes narrowed as the dry bone rattling sound filled the house again. He's heard it a few times since the older Uchiha moved in, but this was the worst fit so far. It stirred the medic side of him and worry filled his heart. He carefully climbed out of bed and darted into the kitchen. Sasuke was out, training with Kakashi, although he promised to finish sooner than normal. He leaned against the wall just as Itachi stood to his full height again, having bent forward from the force of his coughs. Are you alright, Itachi? He asked calmly. The Uchiha turned to look at him. Since he had been ordered to rest, Itachi has been doing the cooking for them as neither of them wanted to risk Sasuke accidentally burning down the kitchen. The older shinobi gave a strained smile. I am. Nothing to worry about. You should go and see Tsunade-sensei. It will pass, Naruto-kun. Itachi insisted. The blonde scowled, eyes narrowed. I've dealt with Sasuke for ages, so I know that tone. Besides, you never, ever try lying to an empathic sensor. Itachi's eyes went wide. Naruto waved him off with an annoyed look. I'm starting to think that downplaying your medical condition is the real curse you uchihas struggle with and not the Nikishimi no Noroi. Sasuke still tries to do it every single time, even though he knows that as a medic I will notice, and if he tries lying I will sense it. Itachi grimaced. Gomen. Naruto cut him off with a sharp look. We'll speak about it when Naisama gets back. The Uchiha hummed, a resigned look on his face. But then, suddenly his eyes glinted. Actually, I'd like to speak about something too. Naruto arched an eyebrow. Which is? He had a vague idea, but he wanted to hear it from Itachi. Surely, the genius he was, he noticed how different they were from others their age. There were things that I've noticed this past few days, and I would think it has something to do with our behavior. He stated. Yes, partially. And with how Sasuke managed to turn Tsukiyomi against me. He murmured, and Naruto felt his disbelief spike up. The blonde chuckled. It's connected to what we want to tell you. But in exchange, you tell me about your little problem. Itachi sighed. Very well. Sasuke made it home barely half an hour later, more annoyed than anything. Naruto didn't even bother asking, knowing his brother would tell anyway. As it turned out, it was just Kakashi whining about his book, which Sasuke had managed to turn into a pile of ashes while demonstrating the workings of a Raiten jutsu. Typical Kakashi. So he's noticed, Sasuke muttered, as Naruto recounted his exchange with Itachi. I wanted to tell him anyway. We told Kakashi and Yamato, after all. He shrugged. Naruto hummed and nodded. You think we can tell him? Sasuke nodded, his black eyes glinting. 10 minutes later the two found Itachi in his new room, reading. It was Sasuke who spoke first. Nai-san, do you have a moment? Itachi looked up and smiled. Of course, Atoto. They walked in and Itachi set his book aside. The boy sat on the rug, facing the older shinobi. First we'd ask you to keep what we will tell you a secret. Kakashi and Yamato know, so you can discuss it with them. Oh, and Hyuga. The three Hokage also knew. As we told them before Edo Tensei was cancelled. But no one else, because it's dangerous information which may endanger the very existence of this world. Sasuke explained, tone serious. Itachi's face was serious as he nodded, although his eyes flashed with some worry. I understand. Good. Naruto nodded with a smile. Quick question before we start. Who was the Rakuto Sennin? Itachi gave him an odd look, but answered anyway. A man of legends who brought peace and introduced ninjutsu to the world. Rumor has it that the Uchiha and the Senju are his descendants. Yes and no. Sasuke said with a sigh. He introduced Chakra and spread a religion based on understanding, teamwork and unity. And you were just a bit off the mark with descendants. Naruto murmured. His sons were the progenitors of 3 of the 5 great clans. The older was the forefather of the Uchiha, while the younger's descendants were the Senju and at a later time, the Uzumaki. It was also the sons' feud that caused hundreds of years of bloody rivalry between the clans, but this is the simple version. The real story includes manipulation and reincarnation. Itachi stared, eyes wide. His baby brother wasn't his baby brother. His entire world shattered. His baby brother was Otsutsuki Indra, first user of the Sharingan. Suddenly, his not-so-nice thoughts from the morning about the Sharingan came back, but all the complaints died on his tongue. For one, he didn't want to upset his Atoto, and secondly, he did not feel like pissing off the Sennin's former sons when they sat across from him. And Naruto the blonde was Sasuke's brother. Well, at least now he knew why the boys were so close. Hundreds of years. He stood up slowly, careful not to topple over his book. Itachi? Sasuke asked, raising an eyebrow. If you excuse me, I need a moment. He murmured. I need a drink. He thought. Even before the boys could say a word, he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. He prayed that there was a bar within the vicinity of his seal. It was after two sake and a lengthy conversation with Yamato and Kakashi, who apparently also knew of this reincarnation mess, that he returned to the Namikaze residence. Naruto was sprawled on the couch, snoring softly, his limbs in such awkward angles that even looking at the blonde caused phantom pain in his limbs. Like a cat. Sasuke said, chuckling fondly as he shook his head. He's capable of sleeping anywhere, at any time of the day. Always hyperactive. Well, in a way, and when exhaustion hits him, he sleeps like a rock. I think he picked up Shukaku's sleeping habits between my distance time and his naming as the heir of Ninshu. Itachi hummed, glancing at Sasuke, or did he prefer Indra now? He did, after all, speak of the dawn of Chakra as it had been yesterday. Sasuke looked at him with a soft look, as if he read his mind. I'm still me, Oni-san. He whispered. I'm still the boy you poked in the forehead and told to play with later. However, I am no longer unaware of what life is, that nothing ever goes to plan. I am, in a way, a grown, battle-hardened man who knows pain, love and betrayal. Someone who has many, many things to regret. But I also learned to let go of the past just like a Toto. We learned to work together after so long. We learned that we don't have to tackle our and the world's problems alone. We learned that together, we can do what Oto-sama and Oji-sama had done. So, I'm still Sasuke. But I am also Indra. A boy and man who has seen a different world. A different time. I would say you don't have to think differently of me, but I know you would never be able to do that. So instead, I say this: never forget we are kin. That we are brothers. And never forget that I know what it's like to have a little brother. He gestured at Naruto. I know what it feels like taking on the world, maybe even burning the world if it means that people who mean the most are safe and happy. Itachi smiled, touched. This was Sasuke. This was Indra. His baby brother, who was so much more than Itachi could have ever imagined him to be. He stepped closer and hugged Sasuke. Sasuke returned the hug just as strongly, without hesitation. Uchiha progenitor or no, you're still my precious Itoto. Technically, I'm older than you. Sasuke said, a smirk forming on his lips. Itachi's eyes narrowed and he whacked his brother in the back of the head lightly. You picked up too much of Naruto's cheekiness. I've no idea what you're talking about, Oni-san. Sasuke answered, his tone a perfect mix of calmness and conviction, smirk still in place. But Itachi knew better. Sasuke knew what he was talking about, he just didn't want to admit. So, in a moment of childish brotherly revenge, he moved forwards, tacking Sasuke to the ground, which caused him to cry out indignantly. Itachi laughed as the previous smirk turned into a childish pout as they rolled on the floor of the apartment. He almost didn't even remember what was it like to be a carefree child. Being a prodigy, with a demanding father as his. He hadn't really had the time or the chance to be a proper child who played with friends or asked for a bedtime story from his mother. That was the one thing he regretted the most. No. What he regretted the most was that he had taken the same chance from Sasuke. The entire clan had taken that chance from him when they'd planned the coup. But, a part of him, which wished for a peaceful world, felt a bit more at ease. Ami knew what would have happened if he hadn't tried using Tsukiyomi on Sasuke. Perhaps then, Sasuke would have never remembered, and now his little brother and Naruto would be much less prepared for Akatsuki and the destruction those madmen were planning. His laughter and good mood died the moment the breath stuck in his throat, causing another coughing fit. Sasuke froze and sat up, trying to help him, but even moving hurt. He couldn't even breathe. It was like someone had rammed akunai between his ribs. Oh, no, not now. Asura, wake up. Sasuke called, his voice like rumbling thunder, stern and desperate at the same time. Itachi tried forming words, but they died in his throat, worsening his fit even more. He tried breathing through his nose, but it didn't seem to be working. It was like there was not enough oxygen, no matter what he did. Slowly even his senses were getting muddled from the lack of air. And then, he sensed someone next to him, most likely Naruto. He felt hands on his body, one on his upper back and another on his ribs. As the powerful, soothing chakra entered his body, it helped his breath escape and it eased the intense burning pain. It took several minutes, but then the pain in his lungs faded and air filled his whole being again. Naruto's chakra was like a calm current, carrying all the oxygen his body needed. As the pain faded, he was overtaken by tiredness. Naruto shifted just a bit, and soon, Itachi realized that the two younger shinobi were the ones who kept him in a half-laying position. Slowly, Naruto was drawing his chakra back, drop by drop. As it left, Itachi felt his body become heavier. He needed a moment to realize that Naruto had sedated him, but it was too late. The calming chakra took effect, drawing him into darkness. Sasuke tapped his feet softly against the floor of Itachi's room in a nervous rhythm. He watched Naruto's hands glow green with medical chakra as he analyzed the situation. Of course, he'd noticed Itachi cowing since he was back, but he had honestly thought it was just a bad cold or something. But no. This was serious. Much more serious. His brother had almost choked to death. After another few moments, Naruto's hand stopped glowing and he sighed. Sasuke's eyes snapped up, his Sharingan whirling agitatedly. This was the problem with his Kekkei Genkai. It was so tied with his strong emotions that whenever he was over a certain invisible line, his eyes would just activate. Well, he whispered, almost fearing the answer, what's wrong with him? Naruto scowled at him, rolling his eyes. I'm starting to think it wasn't only the curse that stuck with the Uchihas, but your special sort of idiocy as well. He growled. Sasuke wrinkled his nose, but he had no comeback to that. He had, after all, always hated when people saw him sick or otherwise weak. He remembered that he hadn't even allowed his wife to see him like that years after their father's death. Heck, he hadn't allowed their father to see him like that, even when younger. What's wrong with him? He might have caught a cold sometime and it hadn't been properly cured. Then, all that fire jutsu he uses hurt him even more. The superheated chakra, the wisps of smoke he breathed in after each one. Worse and worse each time. And then another cold, even harder for him to get out of it. Even more smoke. It weakened the chakra circulation in his lungs. That is meant to clean that part of the body from toxic fumes caused by smoke or gas-based poison. Naruto shook his head. A never-ending cycle. It weakened his lungs so much that I'm even surprised he lasted this long. If he were any more careless a year or so and he would have gradually weakened from the low oxygen level in his blood and then his lungs would just have stopped working. Sasuke blinked, making sense of what Naruto was trying to say. You saying he would have died from badly treated cold and smoke in his lungs? Naruto nodded, his face serious. Yes, basically. Sasuke groaned, hitting his head against the wall. Baka. 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 Sasuke huffed, rubbing his forehead. Can you heal him? I've heard of such thing happening, but hadn't encountered it before. So, I'll go and speak with Oba-san about it. I'll leave a few herbs here that you should smoke when he wakes up. They'll help his breathing and will start cleaning his lungs a bit. Sasuke nodded. Okay. Oh, and it seems his illness was affecting him wholly, which means that as a side effect of his current condition, he's malnourished. Just a bit. Make sure he eats something while I'm away. Sasuke twitched. His brother hadn't been taking care of himself at all. Itachi. He grunted irritatedly. He was starting to think that maybe, just maybe Itachi was born into the wrong clan. He cardinally would have passed for the stupidest Senju Uzumaki if the clans were still thriving. Not even Naruto was this stupid on the worst of his days. Tsunade blinked at him, slowly placing her sake on her desk. Uchiha Itachi is what Naruto hummed. You heard me, Oba-san. I helped him out of the last fit and while unconscious, I checked his condition. I left a handful of herbs for Sasuke to smoke when he wakes up. It'll ease his breathing, although I don't really know how else should we deal with this considering his current state of malnourishment. His aunt groaned, her forehead hitting the sturdy oak desk with a loud thud. Her supposed prodigy, he is really stupid. Yeah. Nai-sama said the same thing. Well, I'll trust your diagnosis, Naruto. Make sure he gains some weight and keep an eye on him for those coughing fits. We'll give him a week or so to gain some strength and then I'll visit and see what'll we do from there. From what you say, with some extra effort, he is still completely curable. There might be some lifelong consequences, but he will live. The blonde smiled. Wonderful. As he turned away from the cage desk, he heard his aunt take another sip of her drink, muttering about not getting enough payment for all the extra work she had to do because of idiots. Sasuke breathed a sigh of relief when Itachi woke up. Sasuke. He murmured. Sasuke shook his head, his Sharingan flashing in agitation. Back Itachi. What were you thinking, not seeing a proper medic? Or not taking care of yourself at all? He gently shoved a plate of warm food into his brother's lap as Itachi sat up. Sasuke, don't say anything. Atoto was the one who laid down the basis of chakra-based medicine. He learned from Hashirama-sama while the Hokage were here and now he's studying under Tsunade. And do you know what he said? His eyes narrowed. That all this mess could have been avoided if you went to see a medic and it could have been just a civilian, not even a shinobi. He gestured at the food. Better eat that to the last. How the hell do you fight like that? Itachi opened his mouth to say something, but thought better of it and turned to his food instead. Satisfied with the scene, Sasuke slipped out of the room to grab the herbs Naruto has left and when he returned, he ignited them just with a tiny bit of Kaiten chakra, releasing a long line of pleasant-smelling smoke. He placed a small bowl on the windowsill and glanced at Itachi, who was still eating. You don't get to scare me like that again, or the Shinju help me. There won't be a Shunshin fast enough to save you from what you'll get in return. He murmured heatedly. It's nothing serious. Sasuke snorted. You're trying to deceive the wrong person, Oni-san. I've seen that you have almost choked out there. If not for Naruto. He shook his head. Itachi gave him a tiny, apologetic smile. Gomen, Sasuke-chan. Sasuke growled a bit. I'm just a bit too old to be called that, Itachi. And I still have my dignity, so my brother or not, you don't get to use that. Sasuke-kun, then. His brother corrected, between two bites. Sasuke huffed. And much better, I suppose. Once Itachi was done with his food, Sasuke took the empty plate and hugged his brother for a moment, burying his face in the crook of Itachi's neck. Itachi hugged him back and then a moment later Sasuke stepped away. Now, best for you to rest. You need anything, just call. Sasuke, I can. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. You're sick and I refuse to have you wandering around. You'll just stay in here, safe. But, for the rest of today, you're bedbound and I know enough about these sort of things to know you need sleep. So, chop, he made an offhanded gesture at the covers, before I put you under a Jinjutsu. You wouldn't. Itachi said simply. Sasuke arched an eyebrow, his eyes morphing into the mangyeko. You want to bet, Itachi? Itachi's right eye twitched, but then he sighed in resignation and sunk under his covers. No respect for your elders at all, He murmured under his breath, is that something you picked from Naruto-kun, too? Sasuke smirked. No. It's just that I'm older than you. The half-sulky, half-irate expression that crossed Itachi's face was the best one he'd seen all his life. He couldn't help the deep trolly laughter that escaped him as he wandered into the kitchen to clean up while his brother rested. Worry aside, it was nice to have Itachi back. And that marks the end of the 5th part of the story. If you guys made it this far and want more contents like this, hit that subscribe button as well as the bell notification and comment down below to let me know. Thanks for sticking out till the end. I would gladly appreciate every likes, comments and subscribes I could get on this series. It only takes a minute and best of all, you can show your support for absolutely no cost. See you in the next one.